Chapter 940. As the main building of Emperor Dong's palace, the magnificent castle in the center of the palace was a large multifunctional office area. The castle was huge and looked magnificent, but it was like an iceberg. Compared with the part exposed to the public, the part hidden underground was more amazing and larger. The castle had 6 floors. The first floor was the hall. When Emperor Dong's palace was fully developed, there would be many office windows here. Now it was just a prototype. The second and third floors were the office areas for the civil staff of Emperor Dong's palace. Departments such as finance, commerce, logistics, public relations, research and development were divided into blocks on the second and third floors. The fourth floor was the multifunctional area, where dining, entertainment, fitness, and leisure were concentrated. It was a place for the civil staff and senior officials to relax. The fifth floor was the data database and monitoring area. More and more files, materials, and data were stored in the Emperor Dong's palace, and it was equipped with a weapon system and monitoring equipment that had almost no blind spots. Almost every corner of the Emperor Dong's palace could be projected on the big screens on the 5th floor. Similarly, after several upgrades, the weapon system could accurately hit any corner of the Emperor Dong's palace. This 6th-generation weapon system, codenamed Guardian, was completely synchronized with Mount Dibing in Beihai. This was also one of the deals Li Tianlan made with Summer Solstice when he swept across Beihai. In terms of technology, it was the world's top level. Even if Emperor Dong's palace really made Xianyuan City a part of itself, with the Guardian as the core, Emperor Dong's palace could also set up some weapon systems to work with the Guardian to protect Emperor Dong's palace in all aspects. The top floor of the castle was the residence of the senior officials of Emperor Dong's palace. Everyone had their own area, and they could decorate it according to their wishes. The 6th-floor building was not so extraordinary, and the internal planning was basically the layout of a normal force. But the underground space of the castle had 12 floors. The first and second floors were the logistics warehouse of Emperor Dong's palace, where daily supplies were stored. From the 3rd floor to the 12th floor, almost every floor was the secrets of Emperor Dong's palace. The 3rd floor of Emperor Dong's palace was Yu Donglai's territory. As a poison doctor who had once been famous in the dark world, Yu Donglai had been the leader of 3 generations, Li Honghe, Li Guangtu, and now Li Tianlan. It could be said that he was the founding member of the Li family for 3 dynasties. Li Tianlan also respected him enough. At that time, he just asked casually, and Li Tianlan directly gave him the 3 basement floors of the castle as a laboratory. Yu Donglai's life was very comfortable. He had been dealing with all kinds of poisons for most of his life. For him, it had almost become a survival habit or even an instinct. There were all kinds of seemingly inconspicuous pets in the laboratory on the 3rd underground floor. Yu Donglai, who was already old, had completely given up the idea of fighting and let his condition continue to deteriorate. Most of his time was spent in his laboratory taking care of his little babies. Every time he saw them, he felt extremely comfortable. The old man's children had all died on the battlefield. Only his granddaughter was left, and now she had a husband. Yu Qingyan had decided to marry Ning Qianxing in May next year. Because of this, Yu Donglai had met and talked with Ning Ziyuan, the commander of the Tian'an Freedom Corps, several times. Even among the current top officials of Emperor Dong's palace, Ning Qianxing's future was destined to be one of the best. His martial arts might not be invincible, and it seemed difficult for him to even enter the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. But the position of Mayor Xianyuan had already determined his future identity. As long as Li Tianlan did not fall, Ning Qianxing would inevitably become one of the directors standing at the peak of Zhongzhou State in 20 years. Even if he was not the president or the prime minister, he would certainly be a person with real power. Yu Donglai was very satisfied with his grandson-in-law. Now, I just hope that Qianxing and Qingyan will have children later after they get married. They are still young, so there is no hurry. As for me, I think I can live for many years. If their children are born a few years later, I'll have a few more years to spend with these little babies of mine. When my great-grandchildren or granddaughters are born, I'll have to take care of the 2 little guys' children. These little babies of mine. My little babies. In the huge laboratory on the 3rd underground floor, Yu Donglai happily introduced the internal facilities to Qin Weibai, who followed him. He sounded very happy when he talked about Ning Qianxing and Yu Qingyan. But when he thought of their children and the cute little babies in front of him, his tone inevitably became a little complicated and melancholy, with a trace of expectation and reluctance. Qin Weibai stood beside Yu Donglai and quietly looked at a creature that looked like a big frog in an exquisite window in front of her. The big frog was also staring at Qin Weibai. After a short moment of eye contact, its belly bulged and it spat out a mass of green mucus. Qin Weibai frowned slightly and felt a little disgusted. Your little babies are really ugly. Maybe you are as ugly in its eyes. Yu Donglai laughed and knocked on the glass of the window as if he was greeting the big frog. The big frog jumped up and down and spat out another mouthful of green mucus. The window began to shimmer, and the temperature inside the window began to drop. The gravity inside the window also seemed to have changed slightly. The green slime that rolled down the glass gradually gathered in one spot, slowly condensing in the corner, and finally slid into a transparent container in the window. Qin Weibai frowned slightly and looked away. Next to the big frog, there was a lump of black meat of an unknown species. The meat was slowly wriggling, and there was a black liquid in it. Qin Weibai looked away again. There were countless windows in the huge space on the third underground floor. Almost every window had some strange animals or plants. But at first glance, there were really not many things that were pleasing to the eye. Combined with the cold and damp environment on the third underground floor, Qin Weibai couldn't help saying, "Old man, your taste is getting heavier and heavier." "Really?" Yu Donglai asked in reply. "You weren't like this when I knew you. At that time, you were still cooking in Huading. It seemed that you were more interested in studying the menu." Qin Weibai felt a little helpless. "That's because the environment didn't allow it." Yu Donglai sighed and said, "If I had such a lab back then, I wouldn't have bothered to study the menu. Take a look at this. This is called black moongrass. It's my latest invention. If you grind it into powder and mix it with the little frog's poison, it will become an extremely active poison. If eaten, the target's internal organs will become fibrotic within half a year. In the later stages, this poison can even absorb the activity in the human's blood. Basically, there's no cure for it." You're not interested? Then look at this. I haven't decided on a name for it yet. If you grind it into powder and put it in the food and drink, it's colorless and tasteless, but it can quickly burn fat inside the human body. I can guarantee that even the body of an invincible realm expert can't bear the effect of this drug and become weaker and weaker in the shortest time. Isn't it awesome? Qin Weibai listened quietly and suddenly said, "To put it bluntly, isn't this a diet drug? It's different from diet drugs. This kind of drug can burn fat even for people who don't need to lose weight. It's possible to turn them into dry people." Yu Donglai looked serious. Qin Weibai felt a little helpless. "Old man, you're really getting more and more boring. You don't understand the fun of the old." Yu Donglai laughed and said, "It's a hobby. Where's the thing I want to see? I think everything here is what you want to see." Yu Donglai muttered and walked to the depth of the laboratory. "Don't tell me you don't know what it means for me to put the laboratory here." Qin Weibai smiled and didn't speak. Of course, she knew what it meant to put Yu Donglai's laboratory here. It not only meant that Li Tianlan had absolute trust in him, but also meant that Li Tianlan recognized his ability as a poison doctor. The castle had 6 floors above ground and 12 floors below ground. Strictly speaking, there was nothing particularly important on the 6 floors above ground. The real secrets were all underground. Except for the warehouses on the 1st and 2nd floors, from the 3rd floor onwards, every floor below had secrets of Emperor Dong's palace. To say the least, even if Li Tianlan was not in Emperor Dong's palace in the future and the enemy broke into Emperor Dong's palace or even broke into the castle, Yu Donglai could use his laboratory to completely turn the space on the 3rd floor into a poison battlefield to protect the secrets of the lower floors. From this point of view, the ugly animals and twisted plants in the laboratory could be regarded as part of the trump card of Emperor Dong's palace. This was what Qin Weibai needed to see. But it was not what she wanted to see most. "I always feel that you're a little eager. Are you going to use this thing to plan something again? Yudonglai took Qin Weibai to a completely sealed area of the laboratory and asked casually. You'll know soon. Qin Weibai's voice was a little expectant. Yudonglai shrugged slightly and put his hand on the door handle. He verified his fingerprint, entered the password, scanned his pupils, and verified the password again. Click. There was a clear sound. The alloy door opened slightly to both sides, and behind the door, a space the size of a living room appeared in front of them. Chirp, an incomparably clear and melodious voice rang out without warning. This sound was not loud, but it suddenly appeared, extremely clear and even a little harsh. It was like a bird's chirp that was distorted to the extreme. It was not angry, but extremely violent, like a crazy burning fire. Qin Weibai seemed to frown a little uncomfortably, but she still walked in. There was almost no extra furniture in the small sealed space. There was only a small table with pens and ink on it, as well as a few neatly arranged thick notebooks. A special glass cover covered most of the space, and inside the glass cover was a field of brightly colored lush. Qin Weibai took 2 steps forward. Inside the glass cover, a twisted purple tree about 2 meters high stood inside the glass cover. It was dark purple all over, and even its leaves were glowing with a dark purple light. The purple tree was thick and twisted. The trunk, which should have been straight, seemed to have been folded at will countless times, looking extremely uncoordinated. The dense branches and leaves grew without any pattern, and the whole thing looked extremely ferocious. A fiery red bird was standing on a branch, silently staring at Qin Weibai outside the glass cover. Under the trunk, on the green grass that was a little black, a blue turtle was quietly lying under the tree, motionless. A red bird, a blue turtle, and a purple tree. Qin Weibai stood in front of the glass cover, watching the scene, and kept silent for a long time. This is what you want to see. Yudonglai's light voice rang out. It's also the most successful masterpiece of my life. What do you think? It's spectacular. Qin Weibai whispered. Chapter 941. Qin Weibai's evaluation was completely sincere. The red bird, the blue turtle, and the purple ancient tree did not look very big, but in the limited space, the dense branches almost crowded every available corner. If the twisted trunk stood upright, it would be at least more than 20 meters. The thick trunk kept twisting on the left and right sides, looking like a giant dragon with a curved body. The ancient tree was so eye-catching, but the red bird and the blue turtle were still eye-catching. 1 big and 2 small, 1 plant and 2 animals, got along very well in the huge glass cover, each with its own light. Qin Weibai stared at the scene deeply. The red bird stood lazily on the treetop. It was very small, even slightly smaller than a sparrow, but its whole body was fiery red, even blood red. 2 very thin but very long feathers stretched out from under its wings, extending more than a meter long, like 2 red lines supporting its small body. Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes, walked to the glass window, and knocked slightly. Chirp! Another fierce and loud bird chirp sounded. On the treetop, the red bird suddenly opened its wings. In an instant, there seemed to be 2 groups of flames burning on the purple ancient tree. Qin Weibai took a step back and looked at the scene. Her eyes were shining. The 2 feathers on the wings of the red bird were more than a meter long, which were its folded wings. Now, as it flapped its wings, the 2 wings, which were more than a meter long, were fully opened. All of Qin Weibai's eyes were attracted by the 2 dazzling red wings. The wings flapped slowly. In this case, in the center of the 2 wings, the body of the red bird, which was smaller than a sparrow, was like an ordinary organ, as if the 2 wings were its main body. So beautiful, she whispered to herself, with sincere appreciation in her tone. Where's its information? Qin Weibai asked softly. Yudonglai found a button at the bottom of the glass cover in silence and pressed it. The glass cover began to glow faintly, revealing line after line of text. Blue crowned sparrow, poison. Fire cloud bird, deadly poison, 6 experiments. Magma bird, liquid poison, 75 experiments. Poison blood wings, poison fusion mutation, 315 experiments. Cardinal sparrow, extremely hot poison, 1,372 experiments, vermilion bird, unknown. Qin Weibai's gaze shifted slightly to the right. Similarly, a piece of text appeared on the glass cover on the right. Deep sea frigid turtle, deadly poison, dark lurker, latent poison, 46 experiments. Frost turtle, poison assimilation, 285 experiments. Black shell, extremely cold poison, 600 experiments. Black tortoise, unknown, immature. His gaze was focused on the center as the gentle and subtle words continued to shine. Ebony, basic container. Poison fusion body, mutated, genetically modified. Poison mutation body, multiple mutations, number of experiments unknown. Poison immune body, tree of life, unknown. Qin Weibai carefully read every word and did not speak for a long time. What he saw in front of him could be said to be one of the most core secrets of the Li family. The overall plan began more than 260 years ago and was called the Tree of Life Project. The Li family and the Wang family of Beihai had been tied together for a very long time. Therefore, in terms of horizontal comparison, the Tree of Life Project was equivalent to the Wang family of Beihai's Immortality Potion Improvement Plan. It was one of the most important plans of the Li family. From a biological point of view, this is indeed a miracle. Qin Weibai whispered. She had seen this plan in her notes, but it was the first time that she had really come into contact with these three creatures. Both Cardinal and Black Shell are the work of predecessors. Yudonglai's tone was a little emotional. He did not deny Qin Weibai's statement. However, the existence of Hongke and Xianxia was indeed a miracle in life. In the beginning, the Li family had gathered a large number of biological experts. The initial purpose was undoubtedly to enhance their strength. From the beginning, the Li family attached great importance to all kinds of poisons. The reason was that a very important heir of the third generation of the Li family had died from a strange poison in the Hing state. Therefore, this plan was called the Poison King Plan at the beginning. The original purpose of the Li family was to develop a poison that could kill any creature. After countless experiments in the early stage, the original team identified two creatures as the carriers of the Poison King Plan. The blue-crowned sparrow had ordinary poisons but was extremely sensitive to poisons. The deep-sea cold turtle had highly toxic and strong vitality, and had a certain degree of resistance to all kinds of poisons. That was the first part of the plan. Then, over a long period of time, after countless experiments, it successfully evolved again and again. Yes, was evolution. In life, it was similar to a miracle of evolution. The original carrier was combined with various theoretical species to give birth to offspring. At the same time, a large number of poisons were used to improve the genes of hybrids. Then, the theoretical different species were combined with the genetically improved hybrids to give birth to new offspring. Experiments, failures, and failures kept repeating the process. Different theories were overturned again and again. The blue-crowned sparrow kept dying, one after another, year after year. In the 10th year of the Poison King Plan, the blue-crowned sparrow completed its perfect evolution for the first time and became a highly toxic fire cloud bird. A brand new species evolved from the blue-crowned sparrow. 5 years later, the research of the deep-sea cold turtle made a major breakthrough. The deep-sea cold turtle evolved into a dark lurker. The Poison King Plan took a crucial first step. More than 200 years of research, generations of teams made countless efforts, and finally, the blue-crowned sparrow and the deep-sea cold turtle evolved to a very high level. Cardinal. Black armor. Compared with the original blue-crowned sparrow and the deep-sea cold turtle, the cardinal and black armor had nothing in common with the former two. They were completely two new species with highly toxic bodies. This was the extremely secretive poison of the Li family's hottest poison and the coldest poison. The hottest poison was as violent as fire, and its toxicity was extremely fierce. In theory, a drop of cardinal's blood could completely ignite all the vitality of an expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm in an instant, burning the opponent into nothingness in the fastest time, even leaving no ashes. The coldest poison was good at hiding. Once poisoned, there was basically no possibility of getting rid of it. It was destined to accompany the poisoned person for a lifetime. When two kinds of extremely opposite poisons were combined, the intense and difficult-to-remove poison was enough to kill an expert at the peak of the invincible realm. This kind of poison could be turned into a liquid or a gaseous poison, which was almost impossible to guard against. The only drawback was that the fusion process of the two poisons was extremely difficult, and some special materials were needed. At present, Yudonglai only had one real finished poison. Do you want that poison? Yudonglai said slowly, this needs Tianlan's approval. No, that poison can be put aside for the time being. It's not the time to use it yet. Qin Weibai shook her head. The coldest and hottest poison could kill an expert at the peak of the invincible realm, but this did not mean that it had an upper limit. It was just that in the past many years, the peak of the dark world was the expert at the peak of the invincible realm. In her notes, Qin Weibai was very clear that this poison could cause a fatal threat to even an expert beyond the peak of the invincible realm. The deterrent effect of this poison in Emperor Dong's palace was even far greater than that of a fully charged murderous weapon. I'm here to see this tree. Qin Weibai asked, is it called the poison immune body now? Yes, my poison immune body. Yudonglai's spirit was refreshed. His face was glowing, and he deliberately emphasized his tone. Red Sparrow and Black Armor were completed about 60 years ago. It had been nearly 50 years since Yudonglai joined the Li family, and it had been more than 40 years since he began to contact Red Sparrow and Black Armor. Red Sparrow and Black Armor had been evolving for many years, and they were no longer the original ones. Although the newly born Red Sparrow and Black Armor were stronger than before, they were still far from the next perfect evolution that was expected. Yudonglai naturally contributed to this, but his greatest contribution was still on the tree in front of him. About 100 years ago, not long after the blue-crowned sparrow and the frigid turtle completed their third evolution, the team at that time accidentally discovered that the toxins of the magma bird and the frigid turtle could be fused in a certain substance, forming a state that was similar to solidification. In such a state, the combined toxins were almost a whole, and foreign toxins could not affect this whole at all. At that time, this further increased the difficulty of evolution. But at the same time, someone also proposed an idea to study a substance that could fuse the two toxins and use this substance to fuse the two toxins and distribute them to the important personnel of the Li family. In this way, the people who took this solidified toxin would theoretically be immune to all poisons. If this development was successful, not only the combatants of the Li family, but also some researchers and explorers would be able to carry out their work more smoothly. From then on, the Poison King project was renamed to the Mother Tree Project. In the following few years, after countless experiments, a new team joined the Mother Tree Project and came up with a complete set of poison symbiosis theory. The theory of using poison to stimulate life force or even replace life force to greatly extend the life of living things was perfected bit by bit and put into experiments. This was the core of the Li family's Tree of Life plan. However, the implementation of this plan did not go smoothly. Until the eve of the Li family's destruction, after many genetic improvements and mutations, this plan still remained at the stage of poison mutant. Many years after the Li family's destruction, Yudonglai, who was in charge of this plan at that time, had not given up trying. After combining a large amount of information left behind, he finally made the poison mutant evolve again and become a real poison immune body. This was the greatest masterpiece of Yudonglai's life. Just like the name of the poison immune body, he was known as the Poison Doctor and could even be said to be the #1 expert in using poison in the dark world. But his greatest masterpiece was to make a poison immune body that could be immune to any poison. Old man, can this thing really become the Tree of Life in your hands? Qin Weibai asked. It's possible, although the probability is very small, and it's not in my hands. Yudonglai shook his head. I left a lot of information, and I will continue to study it when I have time. It can be regarded as leaving it for future generations. As long as the research continues, there will be a day of success. It's a long time, Qin Weibai smiled. But even now, it's enough to be immune to all kinds of poisons. What are you going to do with it? Yudonglai asked in confusion. The poison used by Kunlun City to control Phoenix Pavilion is a very special kind of neurotoxin. It's difficult to find an antidote for such a toxin, so it can only produce inhibitors. Even Kunlun City can only suppress that kind of virus. Qin Weibai whispered, "They have two means of control, drug control and strong spiritual suggestion. The problem of spiritual suggestion is not a problem for me." So, Qin Weibai smiled gently, and her eyes were indescribably bright. Li Qingqing will soon arrive in Tianen. As long as this tree can successfully make Li Qingqing immune to the neurotoxin of Kunlun City, then the next thing is very simple. Her breath was very quiet, and her expression was very calm and indifferent. I want to completely destroy Kunlun City. Chapter 942. After sending Lin Fengting to the plane, Li Tianlan watched the plane get farther and farther away in his sight and finally disappear. He stood straight and gently breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Lin Yuxian beside him. Lin Yuxian looked a little melancholic and helpless. It might not be appropriate to say that Lin Fengting said goodbye to Li Tianlan, but as a son, Lin Yuxian came to see off his old father with sincerity. But from beginning to end, Lin Fengting did not say a few words to his son. He just talked with Li Tianlan about the origin of the murderous weapon in the cafe. Lin Yuxian was busy with various checks on the plane. After the check, Lin Fengting also left. "What are you thinking about?" Li Tianlan looked at his expression and asked casually. "I wanted to tell him about Qingqing, but I didn't have the chance." Lin Yuxian shook his head. Li Tianlan's mouth twitched. "Don't you think it's too early? Don't say that you are familiar with her. At most, you just met her, right? She may not even remember your name." "Am I so insignificant?" Lin Yuxian's tone was puzzled. Li Tianlan took out a cigarette and threw it to Lin Yuxian. Then he turned and walked to the black car parked in the airport. "Anyway, it's too early. You can't let Uncle Lin directly propose marriage with the power and identity of the Lin clan, can you? Even if Uncle Lin is willing to do this for you, Li Shi, who has had enough of it, may not accept it. I suggest you wait. Today we go back to Tianen. I will try to arrange some opportunities for you to be alone. Then it's up to you." "All right." Lin Yuxian hesitated and nodded. He opened the door and sat in the driver's seat. He asked curiously, "What did my dad say to you? For such a long time?" Li Tianlan glanced at him and did not hide anything. He raised the information in his hand and said, "There are some other questions about the origin of the murderous weapon." If Lin Yuxian was still the heir of the Lin clan, he would know these things sooner or later. Even if he had been removed from the list of heirs, he would definitely know some things in the future. Carefree was destined to be an absolute secret between the Wang family of Beihai and the Lin clan, but the patriarchs of some important branches would definitely know about it. Not to mention anything else, the patriarch of the Lin clan's branch in Europe would definitely know about the existence of Carefree, and Li Honghe obviously knew about it back then. Even though Lin Yuxian was no longer the heir of the Lin clan, his importance in the Lin clan was beyond doubt. The Lin clan was the god of war in Zhongzhou in the clan's plan, which meant that all branches of the Lin clan in Asia would be led by Lin Yuxian. For Tianlan, Lin Yuxian would also be the most important ally of Emperor Dong's palace in the future. It was not inappropriate to tell him about his carefree life. After Tian Lin and Chen Lin Yuxian was Helan. After listening to Li Tianlan's words, Lin Yuxian was silent for a long time before he asked with some uncertainty. "You could say there is, but you could also say there isn't." Li Tianlan said faintly, "No one can be sure of Wuyo's state, but its activation ability is very high. If it fights alone, its energy will be exhausted very soon. Only by combining with a human and undergoing transformation can it completely stabilize its combat capability. But who in Beihai can accept Wuyo's transformation?" It wasn't that there wasn't such a candidate, but it was obviously very difficult for Beihai to make up his mind. Wang Xianxia would not do that unless it was absolutely necessary, let alone Wang Tianzong and Summer Solstice. It was related to the core foundation of the Wang family of Beihai. In this case, even Dijiang could not be completely trusted. Only in the hands of the lineal descendant of Beihai could Wang Xianxia rest assured. After all, Strictly speaking, Carefree and Carefree were not very loyal to Beihai and the Lin clan. Rather than saying that they were guarding Beihai and the Lin clan, it was better to say that they could not leave the place where they lived. This also meant that Beihai was likely to have no candidate who could accept Carefree's transformation. In this case, Carefree might make people afraid, but it was not impossible to solve. Li Tianlan was not very afraid of Carefree's combat capability, but as the core of the life metal, its serious suppression on Heartless was the most troublesome part for him. But in a short time, he could not find any solution. Lin Yuxian frowned and said nothing. It's nothing. Li Tianlan said quietly, after all, in the upcoming decisive battle, Beihai and I are not enemies. Maybe there will be a conflict in the end, but it will be after the enemy is killed. At that time, it is unknown how much threat Carefree can pose. It is unlikely that Beihai will use Carefree to deal with you, but that is the core of the life metal. If Beihai uses the core to plot against Heartless, this chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Lin Yuxian was a little hesitant. It's okay. Li Tianlan looked out of the window and said faintly, I said it in the desert. Now it is time to let the dark world know that even without Heartless, I am still invincible. A strange light flashed in Lin Yuxian's eyes. Tianlan. The car quietly left the airport. He suddenly shouted. Li Tianlan glanced at him. Shall we find a time to compare notes? Lin Yuxian said with a smile. You and me? Li Tianlan laughed. What kind of request is that? Just think of it as me overestimating myself. Lin Yuxian was still smiling. His smile was very peaceful. Li Tianlan nodded without hesitation and said, Okay. Thank you. Lin Yuxian's tone was very serious. Li Tianlan shook his head, thought for a moment, and said, After the decisive battle in Beihai, leave Emperor Dong's palace. After returning to Tiannan, bring military counselor here to discuss it. Emperor Dong's palace is not short of resources now. Whatever you need, Emperor Dong's palace can give you money, connections, talents, anything. I can also transfer some people to help you for the time being. There is about less than a year left. During this period, we can compare notes more. After the election, the situation in Zhongzhou state should stabilize. I hope that you can become an invincible realm expert by then. If everything goes well, it will be time for you to replace Kunlun City. Lin Yuxian had never been a vassal of Emperor Dong's palace. Even though he was now the commander of the nightmare army of Emperor Dong's palace, Emperor Dong's palace had always positioned him as an ally, not a subordinate. By integrating into Emperor Dong's palace, he would integrate into Zhongzhou state, establish his own branch, rebuild academy platform, and replace Kunlun City. This was the direction that Lin Yuxian was heading for. However, he never thought that his pace would be this fast. Replace Kunlun City in about a year? Isn't it too fast? Lin Yuxian retorted subconsciously. A little. Li Tianlan nodded. But when the old god falls, the new god will inevitably take over. From the Lin clan to the Li family, to the Gu family, and then to the Lin clan, it's a perfect cycle. Li Tianlan said softly, I know you are not prepared enough. He paused and said slowly, Gu Xingyun may not be able to hold on until you are fully prepared. End of this chapter. Chapter 943. When the taxi stopped in front of the sanatorium, the fiery sunset had disappeared. The cold chill was wrapped in the night and enveloped the world. He got out of the car and quietly looked at the warm lights in the sanatorium in front of him. He stayed there as if he was lost in memories. On the bustling street, the dense traffic flowed by. He stood quietly, looking at the direction of the sanatorium with exhaustion and confusion, like a travel-worn passerby. He couldn't tell why he came here. It was completely out of instinct. When he got the news about her, he didn't think, hesitate, or make a choice. He wanted to come here, so he came. Emperor Dong's palace was different from Kunlun City. Li Tianlan was also different from Gu Xingyun. So he knew very well that he couldn't watch silently like before. If he didn't want to lose her again, he had to try his best to fight for it. The turbulent memories were like a monstrous tide, with unparalleled power in the night. That kind of power pressed him firmly in place, and all the scenes in his mind were long and illusory like scenes of the past. The past flashed silently in his mind. He laughed. The clearest thing in his memories was not the first time they met, nor was it the many times they had gotten close but eventually distanced from each other. Instead, it was that cold and gloomy winter. In that gloomy palace, in front of countless people, she quietly floated on the beam of the bedroom. She wore a plain white dress, a simple wooden hairpin, without any extra decoration, and a plain face. On a most ordinary day, at an ordinary time, she quietly hung herself in the bedroom. So quiet, so indifferent. That year, on that day, her figure swayed in front of him like a sharp knife, piercing through his flesh, piercing through his chest, piercing through his heart, as if his entire body was being torn into countless bloody pieces. In his memory, it was a tragic world that could no longer be described as tragic. Some people's families were ruined, some were separated from their families, some were betrayed by their families, and some died without a complete corpse. One after another, those who stood at the peak fell with endless glory and glory. Now when he thought about it again, no one could escape unscathed. His memory was full of death, blood, and betrayal. One by one, they ended miserably and left miserably. Some died with their eyes open, and some lived a life worse than death. It was an era full of darkness and cold colors. As a survivor of that era, he was undoubtedly lucky. Lucky to see the woman he loved die in someone else's bedroom. He was fortunate enough to see his father, whom he worshipped, personally dig out his own heart. He was fortunate to see everything he had fought for being easily crushed into dust by the general trend. How lucky! The most fortunate thing was that he was still alive and had the opportunity to change everything. He took a deep breath and suppressed his overflowing thoughts bit by bit. He walked forward slowly, took out his phone, and made a call. The call was quickly connected. Saint's surprised voice sounded. Xianxia. It's my honor to have my name appear in His Highness's address book. Xianxia chuckled. Saint remained calm and collected himself. He said calmly, "Why are you looking for me?" No matter how low-key Xianxia was, no one dared to say that he was a nobody. He went from the fire-flaming realm to the half-step invincible realm overnight. He was one of the most dazzling young people in Zhongzhou State today, the son of Jiang Shan. He was a general of the army headquarters and the former vice-marshal of the Snowdance Corps. No matter which identity he had, no one would think that he was a nobody. Saint would naturally remember his contact information. Not only him, but the name Jiang Shangyu was also marked as an important person even in Li Huaqing's address book. I'm at the gate of the sanatorium in Yuzhou. Jiang Shangyu's smile was peaceful. In the night, it was a smiling face that would make people feel very warm. I want to go in and visit Ms. Li Shi, and Qingqing. On the phone, Saint was silent for a moment. If His Highness wants to report to His Majesty Li Tianlan, I can wait, Jiang Shangyu said calmly. His attitude was neither too high nor too low. When he talked about Li Tianlan, he naturally used the title of His Majesty, which made people feel no malice. Jiang Shangyu had always been a little strange about his position. After the chaos in Snow Country, his declaration that he had grown up was undoubtedly tantamount to officially parting ways with Kunlun City. Similarly, his relationship with the Wang family of Beihai was not good. His relationship with Li Tianlan was even worse. No one in Zhongzhou State would ignore the existence of Jiang Shangyu. But seriously speaking, it seemed that no one really regarded him as an enemy. For a moment, it was not easy for Saint to determine his relationship with Jiang Shangyu. All the superpowers, including Emperor Dong's palace, might be on guard against him. But speaking of hostility, it seemed that there was not much to say. Even after the incident in Beijiang today, it was still the same. The sanatorium was not a forbidden place. If Jiang Shangyu wanted to come in and visit Li Shi, he would go through the normal procedure. He would greet Saint, and Saint would not find any reason to refuse. No need. Saint said slowly, I will greet the guards. You can register and come in directly. Thank you. Jiang Shangyu smiled and hung up the phone. The registration was very simple, and entering the sanatorium was even more unimpeded. Walking through the tree-lined path in front of the sanatorium, at the end of the road, military counselor was standing there quietly. Seeing Jiang Shangyu coming over, he nodded slightly. "I asked Li Shi," Saint said blandly. "She agreed to see you." Jiang Shangyu smiled and said, "Thank you." Saint turned around and led the way. After 2 steps, he suddenly asked, "Do you know about what happened in Beijiang?" "Yes." Jiang Shangyu nodded naturally. Huang Tong was too outrageous. He deserved to die. His Majesty Dong Huang did a good job. In fact, before I came, my father asked me to say thank you to His Majesty. Even before the blockade action, Huang Tong's military rank was only the same as Jiang Shangyu's. Now, with his death, the army headquarters had confirmed his treason. Therefore, when talking about Huang Tong, he would naturally not be polite. "Thank you?" Saint repeated, "Thank you." His tone was a little playful and gloomy. "Indeed, it is necessary for you to say thank you to His Majesty. If His Majesty is in the sanatorium, I will say it to him in person." Jiang Shangyu's smile remained unchanged. Saint took a deep look at him, narrowed his eyes, and suddenly asked, "Is this what the counselor wants?" "I don't know what you mean," Jiang Shangyu said with a smile. "Your Jiang family wants to take over Beijiang in one bite. You are very ambitious, but have you ever considered the problem that you can't take it?" Saint was still calm and collected. If he was facing Jiang Shan, no matter how well-educated Saint was, he would inevitably sneer at him. But facing Jiang Shangyu, he had no such thoughts at all. This might also be Jiang Shangyu's characteristic. He was also arrogant, but on some sensitive matters, he could infinitely reduce his sense of existence to the extent that he did not attract attention at all. "We never consider problems that don't exist." Jiang Shangyu's voice was soft, but there was a hidden needle in it. In other words, the possibility of not being able to take over Beijiang did not exist at all? Saint raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, "I have thought about it for a while, but I still can't figure out who you can rely on. If you don't have a strong enough backer, even if the Jiang family manages to take over Beijiang now, they will spit it out sooner or later. The parliament can't let Beijiang stay in this state for a long time. His Majesty doesn't want to see this situation either. At that time, how can you resist it? It's certain that Zhongzhou state doesn't like to see the current situation, but the situation in Beijiang is sensitive. The parliament does need a person who can deal with all kinds of things. And in a short time, Zhongzhou state's eyes are bound to focus on His Majesty Li Tianlan and Qin Fangqing, or Gu Xingyun. Compared with Beijiang, this is the most important thing. The parliament can't take care of us in a short time. This precious time is what we need to fight for. Only with time can we make arrangements." Jiang Shangyu's frankness was a little surprising. He smiled and suddenly said, "Your Highness, what do you think of the game between Emperor Dong's palace, the Wang family of Beihai, the Prince Group, and the Special Warfare Group?" Saint was stunned for a moment, and then he smiled weirdly. "Game? Does the Special Warfare Group still have the qualification to participate in the game?" Jiang Shangyu was silent for a long time, and then he laughed and said, "Indeed, after today's incident, Gu Xingyun's prestige has fallen to the bottom, and the Special Warfare Group is almost out of the game." There was no doubt that Gu Xingyun's failure had extremely serious consequences, but the more serious consequence was that he lost to Li Tianlan, who was at the height of his power, when the Special Warfare Group was caught in the scandal of treason. The relationship between Kunlun City and the Burning Legion could not be explained clearly until now. Gu Xingyun's failure would cause the foundation of Kunlun City to fall apart. Game? Now it seemed that this word was almost a joke when applied to Kunlun Qin. "So, isn't the answer very obvious?" Saint said slowly. "Great minds think alike." Jiang Shangyu was silent for a while, and then he smiled implicitly. The Special Warfare Group is out of the game, and the Prince Group is doomed to fail alone. Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai. To be specific, the southeast, the wealthy families, the north, and the new groups besiege the Prince Group. The academics may stand aside, but it's impossible to be completely neutral. Under the siege of all parties, Qin Fangqing and the Prince Group absolutely can't bear it. The prince group falls apart, and its strength is greatly damaged. Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai have an unprecedented victory. This is probably the result of this game. So, Saint turned his head to look at Jiang Shangyu. The sword intent was flowing in his eyes, with a strong pressure, sharp and threatening. So, Jiang Shangyu spread his hands. Have you ever thought about what will happen to the prince group in the end? This is a group that has rooted in Zhongzhou state for hundreds of years, and its history is even earlier than that of the Southeast group. It is deeply rooted. The prince group's strength may be greatly damaged, or even split, but such a group will not collapse after a setback. Your strength is very strong, but Your Highness, do you really think that the prince group will disappear completely after the game? Saint shook his head subconsciously. Even the most optimistic person could not say that the prince group would disappear completely. They were destined to suffer heavy losses, and even half of their strength could not be preserved. With the fall of Chen Fangqing, the prince group would inevitably suffer losses, but would it disappear completely? This was almost impossible to do, and Li Huaqing would not watch such a situation happen. So the best result was that Chen Fangqing's people would be completely destroyed, and a large number of people in the prince group would enter the new group and the academics. The remaining strength would be scattered in chaos, and then they would slowly integrate, elect a new leader, and stand firm again. At that time, the new prince group would still be a giant. Everything should be over before the election. The prince group will fall into a period of chaos, but as time goes by, people will always be able to see the situation clearly. Maybe in 3 months, half a year, or a year, the prince group will automatically integrate and reshuffle. Jiang Shangyu chuckled softly. In the cold night, his gentle smiling face had a kind of flamboyance and wildness. I seem to remember that my father's position in the prince group is not low. Saint. He suddenly stopped moving forward, turned around, and looked at Jiang Shangyu with a charming smile with burning eyes. Until this moment, he really understood what everything in Beijiang meant. It was like someone gently pushed away the light fog in front of him with his hand, and everything suddenly became clear. Jiang Shan and the prince group had been drifting apart in recent years, and they were almost like strangers. Everyone ignored Jiang Shan's position. But the moment Jiang Shangyu said it again, Saint had goosebumps all over his body. Jiang Shan belonged to the prince group. The prince group was destined to fail in the game. The power led by Chen Fangqing would be completely broken up, and other parts of the power would leave the prince group. The remaining strength would be reintegrated and a new leader would be elected. Who would be more suitable to be the new leader of the prince group than Jiang Shan, who completely controlled everything in Beijiang? Strength, money, connections, status, prestige. Jiang Shan had all the power. When the people in the prince group were in a panic, Jiang Shan directly controlled Beijiang completely. When the prince group woke up, there was no need to say more, and those people would approach Jiang Shan. At that time, the prince group, at that time, it would not be the prince group at all. Maybe it would be the Beijiang group? Or the Jiang group? It was an indescribable feeling. All the temperature in his body seemed to be drawn out in an instant, and the feeling of slight trembling spread all over his body. Saint stared at Jiang Shangyu deeply. This is your purpose? The situation is like this. Jiang Shangyu's expression was a little innocent. Saint snorted with a poker face. I suddenly thought of a word that Chen Fangqing often said recently, and even used several times on His Majesty. Thief of the country. Saint looked at Jiang Shangyu and said, Your Jiang family is the real thief of the country. How dare you? Your Highness, do you want to stop it? Jiang Shangyu chuckled. What do you think? Saint narrowed his eyes. It's too late. Jiang Shangyu smiled and said, It's too late. Since I can say all this, it proves that there is no need to hide a lot of things. You can't stop it, and His Majesty can't either. In fact, I know that he has ideas about Beijiang, but he is too slow. You are all too slow. If His Majesty wants Beijiang, he needs to operate, install people, and create the situation he wants. It's too slow. We are different. The Jiang family has been developing in the northern borderline for decades. The things that His Majesty wants to operate can all be omitted here. We can go straight to the point and form today's situation. It's really too late. You, Jiang Shangyu chuckled. It's too late. You're right. Saint was silent for a long time, then slowly nodded. In terms of the foundation in Beijiang, no one can compare with the Jiang family. This is your advantage, but your advantage is limited to Beijiang. Did the Jiang family really not consider the consequences of what they did today? What consequences? Jiang Shangyu asked indifferently. Saint sneered. You and I both know that there are only two forces in Zhongzhou state that can support Beijiang now. The first is Emperor Dong's palace, and the second is the Wang family of Beihai. The latter will not compete with Emperor Dong's palace for the control of Beijiang at this time, and the backer of the Jiang family is obviously not Emperor Dong's palace. What other answer can there be? Behind you is a foreign force, and it can only be a foreign force. With the support of a foreign force, you can afford the pension and get a lot of resources. But aren't you too naive? You want to control Beijiang, control the prince group through Beijiang, and reach into the power core of Zhongzhou state. Do you really think that Zhongzhou state can't do anything to you? In terms of the foundation in Beijiang, no one could compare with Jiangshan. Anyone or any organization that wanted to plot against Beijiang needed to make certain preparations and operations to achieve the situation they wanted. And most of these actions were aimed at Jiangshan. But Jiangshan didn't need to prepare these things at all. So as long as he wanted Beijiang, he could take over everything in Beijiang as soon as a favorable situation appeared for him. Now there was indeed no one who could organize Jiangshan's actions. But what about after that? As soon as the incident in Beijiang happened, countless people began to secretly investigate whether the backer behind the Jiang family was a foreign force. Such a fact couldn't be a secret and couldn't be hidden. Once the backer behind the Jiang family was exposed, even if Zhongzhou state had no time to care about Beijiang, it couldn't let Jiangshan do whatever he wanted in Beijiang. After all, no matter how serious the fight between Qin Fangqing and Li Tianlan was, it was an internal affair. Once a foreign force was involved, all the forces in Zhongzhou state would unite against it. There is no so-called foreign force. Jiang Shangyu said calmly, if there is, then they can't be regarded as the backer of the Jiang family. On the contrary, the Jiang family should be regarded as their backer. He smiled and said lightly, it seems that many people have misunderstood something. Why does the Jiang family have to have a backer to do things? Our Jiang family doesn't have the habit of being a dog for others. If there is a so-called backer, then the backer and backer of the Jiang family are ourselves. That's all. I've been adjusting my work and rest in recent days. I haven't slept normally for a long time. Now I'm in a daze when I wake up during the day. I'm in a bad state. Usually, I'm in a better state of writing at night, but now I get up early. When night falls, I'm so sleepy that I can't open my eyes. So I didn't update for a day yesterday. I'll try to make up for it after adjusting. Chapter 944. After eating some light but reasonably well-matched nutritious meals, Li Qingcheng took the initiative to clean up the dishes and dimmed the lights in the ward. Do you want to rest now? She sat down on a small bed that was temporarily arranged in the ward, looked at Li Shi and asked softly. I'm not sleepy. Li Shi shook her head, and a smile appeared on her pale face. She patted the place beside her and said softly, come and sit down. Let's talk. Her breath seemed to be weaker than when she had just woken up, but she seemed to be in good spirits. Her daughter, who had been worried about her, was brought back safely by Li Tianlan at the fastest speed. Gu Xingyun fought with Li Tianlan with the 10 Supreme Sword formation as the foundation, but he was completely defeated. His mental state, which had been tense for many years, seemed to relax suddenly. In the afternoon, Li Shi had a little fever. After taking the medicine, her body temperature dropped a little. She seemed to be slowly transforming into a real person, gradually getting rid of the beautiful but lifeless state of a puppet. Oh! Li Qingqing nodded, walked over, picked up the kettle, poured a glass of water, and handed it to Li Shi. When she took it, she stretched out her small hand and touched Li Shi's forehead. She said, your body temperature is normal. Li Shi held the cup and looked at her daughter seriously. After a long time, she laughed at herself. An extremely ironic fact was clearly placed in front of the mother and daughter. They were biological mother and daughter. Li Qingqing was almost 20 years old this year. But they were not familiar with each other. They were really not familiar with each other. It was an extremely absurd but extremely cruel fact. Li Shi rarely saw Li Qingqing on weekdays. Although both mother and daughter were in Kunlun City, they were strictly controlled by Gu Xingyun most of the time. In the few meetings, Li Shi, who was like a walking corpse, did not have much specific image in her daughter's heart. On the contrary, under psychological suggestion, Gu Xingyun was closer to Li Shi. Although Gu Xingyun was not a good father at all, at least his sense of existence was many times that of Li Shi. So at this time, without Gu Xingyun, when she was alone with her daughter, Li Shi obviously had a lot to say, but she didn't know what to say for a while. We will go to Tiannan tomorrow. Will we settle down in Xianyuan City in the future? Li Qingqing carefully cut an apple and took the initiative to speak. Li Shi was stunned and chuckled. You don't like it? Li Qingqing took a small bite of the apple. Her usually calm eyes revealed a trace of confusion. After a while, she shook her head and said softly, I don't know either. It had been less than a day since she left Kunlun City, and she couldn't adapt to the current life where she didn't know what to do at all. She didn't care about Kunlun City and Gu Xingyun, but she didn't resent them either. She suddenly left that place and came to her mother, who was a little strange but had never been far away from her. What she had in her heart was pure discomfort. Then you can think about it. Li Shi stretched out her hand and carefully stroked her daughter's soft hair. Her voice was distant and clear, as soft as the wind. To be exact, I will go to Tiannan tomorrow and settle down in Xianyuan City. If you don't like it there, tell my brother-in-law. Tell His Majesty Donghuang that he can stay in Yuzhou, go to Huading, go to Jiangxia, or go abroad. If you don't want to listen to him, it's fine. I can give you a sum of money. You can go wherever you want and do whatever you want. Carefully, she held the woman in her arms. After her infancy, it was the first time for her to do this for so many years. Feeling Li Qingqing's stiff body, Li Shi's body trembled slightly. Qingqing, I'm not a good mother. This is the truth. I don't even deserve to be a mother. For so many years, I'm sorry. All the things that a mother can give, I'm not worthy of it. All the things that a mother can give me have never been given to me, but at least now, the most important thing I can give is also what I've been looking forward to for many years. She held her daughter tightly and whispered, I'm free, truly free. From now on, no one will restrain me. You can choose not to forgive me or even leave me and never come back. I'm free. Even Li Tianlan won't force me to do anything or go anywhere. I'm the only one who can live in Xianyuan City. I can refuse. After a long time, she nodded quietly in Li Shi's arms and whispered, I don't know where to go. I'll go to Xianyuan City with you. Li Shi nodded hard. She was so excited that she couldn't speak for a while. I heard that Xianyuan City is very beautiful. If we go there, we should be able to get a good house, right? Li Qingqing straightened up from Li Shi's arms and smiled softly. Of course. Li Shi said softly, you can choose from every place in Xianyuan City. She said this with great confidence. She had decided to join Emperor Dong's palace, not being coerced or given away, but voluntarily. Now she had not recovered from her serious injury, and it was estimated that it would be difficult for her to recover to the real peak of the invincible realm. But as long as she had time, she could completely recover to a realm infinitely close to the peak of the invincible realm. In this case, even if her body had not recovered for the time being, she would definitely become the third deputy palace master of Emperor Dong's palace after entering Emperor Dong's palace. She didn't need to worry about some treatment issues at all. Li Qingqing, who was a little confused, nodded and glanced at everything in the room absent-mindedly. She suddenly raised the apple in her hand. It's very sweet. Do you want it? Li Shi looked at her and shook her head slightly. Then let's have a rest. Li Qingqing said. No hurry. Li Shi whispered, I just received a call from Saint. A special guest is coming. A special guest? Li Qingqing blinked her eyes. Is he here to visit? He did say that he was here to visit me. Li, she said thoughtfully, but the main purpose should be for you. Li Qingqing frowned slightly. Who is it? There was a knock on the door before Li Shi answered, slow and clear. Li Shi raised her eyebrows slightly, sat up straight, and said loudly, "Please come in." The door was slowly pushed open. Jiang Shangyu walked in with a calm face. Li Qingqing's rosy mouth opened slightly, and she was a little surprised. She naturally knew Jiang Shangyu. Before he completely fell out with Kunlun City, Li Qingqing had contact with Jiang Shangyu several times, and even played in Beijiang for a period of time. Gu Xingyun mentioned Jiang Shangyu to her several times. In his words, he almost said that Jiang Shangyu would be her husband in the future. There was no willingness or unwillingness, no liking or disliking. Under the subtle psychological suggestion, Li Qingqing just didn't object, that was all. But now, what did he come here for? For herself? Li Qingqing suddenly felt a little strange in her heart. Jiang Shangyu smiled and nodded to Li Qingqing, then bowed deeply to Li Shi and said with a smile, "Long time no see, Aunt Li Shi." Long time no see. Li Shi nodded and didn't express anything about the aunt and the sincere bow. In fact, I have always wanted to see you, but this sanatorium has always been sensitive. Jiang Shangyu stood there with a soft smile and didn't sit down. How is your body, aunt? Not bad. Thank you, child Jiang. Li Shi smiled. Please sit down and have some fruit. Thank you, aunt. Jiang Shangyu nodded politely, took out a small box that didn't look very eye-catching, and said with a smile, "The Jiang family doesn't have any good recovery medicine, but Beijiang is a vast land with abundant resources. We have collected some rare medicinal materials. This is the desert blood of Beijiang. It should be helpful for Auntie's recovery." Desert blood. Not only Li Shi and her daughter, but also Saint, who was guarding outside the ward, suddenly raised his eyebrows. This was one of the most expensive medicinal materials in Beijiang, an extremely rare plant, and one of the main materials of the top healing potions. Not to mention other things, a simple piece of desert blood could be regarded as a holy medicine for healing, and it was of great benefit to Li Shi's body recovery. Although the box in Jiang Shangyu's hand was inconspicuous, if it was given to a force like the Wang family of Beihai that mastered unique gene medicine technology, it could easily be exchanged for an expensive sports car. This was definitely a heavy gift. This gift is too heavy. Li Shi raised her eyebrows slightly and shook her head. Thank you, child Jiang. I appreciate your kindness, but desert blood is not. This is my gift as a junior. Jiang Shangyu smiled softly, and his voice was full of persistence. In any case, I hope you can accept it, aunt. Li Shi pondered a little, glanced at Li Qingqing and nodded. In that case, thank you, child Jiang. Jiang Shangyu waved his hand casually and sat down on the chair. Child Jiang, you came here today not just to visit my injury, right? Li Shi took the box and asked calmly. There is one more thing I want to discuss with you, aunt. Jiang Shangyu came straight to the point. He came a little late today, and it was not suitable for him to stay for too long at this time. Say it. Li Shi looked at him politely. It's about Qingqing. Jiang Shangyu hesitated a little and said it directly. His face was serious and sincere. And, if possible, I want to take Qingqing away from Yuzhou. Li Qingqing frowned slightly and glanced at Jiang Shangyu, a little confused. I'm sorry, no. There was no hesitation, no surprise, and she didn't even ask why. Li Shi gave her answer directly. Simple and direct, without the slightest leeway. Jiang Shangyu was silent for a moment, looked at Li Qingqing, and said in a low voice, Can I ask why? Because you can't. Li Shi's voice was very light, but the content was extremely tough. Jiang Shangyu paused and fell silent. His request might be a little abrupt. But before he came, he really didn't expect Li Shi to be so tough. It was clear that she didn't want to talk about this topic at all. There was no reason why not. If he had to ask, that was no. Jiang Shangyu narrowed his eyes and looked at Li Shi quietly. Under the soft light, his pair of gentle eyes, which usually had a smile on them, inadvertently had a sharp and aggressive look in them. Li Shi also looked at him quietly without saying a word. If Jiang Shangyu suddenly laughed. I mean, aunt, I must take Qingqing away? His voice was very slow, but every word seemed to be filled with a sense of oppression. Then you will die. An indifferent voice suddenly rang out. The space in the ward suddenly fluctuated. Silently, a faint sword energy condensed in the room and finally turned into a sword energy projection of Li Tianlun. He directly answered the question for Li Shi. Die here. Chapter 945. I mean, what if I have to take Qingqing away? Then you'll die. Dire. Simple, clear, and straightforward. What Jiang Shangyu said was his boldest idea. Li Tianlan's answer was the most serious consequence. No one would doubt Jiang Shangyu's determination, but no one would doubt Li Tianlan's strength. The room suddenly quieted down. Li Tianlan's sword chi projection stood in the middle of the ward, looking at Jiang Shangyu lightly. Jiang Shangyu's pupils contracted slightly, and he smiled slowly. Your Majesty, long time no see. Li Tianlan was expressionless. Do you want to try to grab her? Jiang Shangyu's breath surged several times, and finally it slowly converged. He said with emotion, Your Majesty is as tough as ever. He did have the idea of grabbing people. Li Shi had not recovered. Saint was guarding outside. In such a case, if he suddenly took Li Qingqing away, he would have a great chance to escape. But it was completely different with Li Tianlan. When he entered the sanatorium, he did not notice Li Tianlan's breath, but now the projection of the other party appeared in the ward, so the real body must be not far away. Even if he could grab her, Li Tianlan had ruthlessness and would catch up with him in an instant. It made no sense to grab her by force. He sat in the chair again, spread out his hands, and smiled helplessly. Grabbing is not my intention. But you do want to do it. Li Shi said lightly, and her calm eyes stared at Jiang Shangyu. Why do you want to grab my daughter? Jiang Shangyu was silent. He was silent for a long time before he looked up at Li Qingqing. Li Qingqing frowned slightly and looked at him. I like her. Jiang Shangyu's voice was low and frank. I can give her happiness. Tianan. Xinyuan City. Under the cover of night, a black Rolls-Royce stopped in front of a cafe in the center of Xinyuan City. This custom-made Rolls-Royce with countless advanced privacy technologies was originally a gift from the Wang family of Beihai to Emperor Dong's palace when the headquarters of Emperor Dong's palace was built. It was Emperor Dong's car, but now it had become Qin Weibai's special car. Wherever this car was, Qin Weibai was there. Horsewoman got out of the car, bowed slightly, and opened the back door of the car. Qin Weibai walked out of the car, looked at the cafe in front of her, and narrowed her eyes slightly. Let's go. She stood in front of the door for a while before slowly walking into the cafe. The light in the cafe was soft and bright. A Caucasian lady with blonde hair and blue eyes was playing the piano attentively. Amidst the pleasant music, a figure in the corner of the cafe stood up and waved at Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai walked over with a calm expression. In the corner was a young man who seemed to always have a subtle smile on his face. When he saw that Qin Weibai had noticed him, he sat down again and looked at Qin Weibai with a somewhat presumptuous gaze. Even though it was winter, the weather in Tianan was still warm. Qin Weibai was wearing a thin white sweater and black wide-legged pants. Her hair was tied up. She was 1.76 meters tall and wore a pair of 7-centimeter high heels. She looked like a fairy as she walked. She was tall enough to make most men feel ashamed of their inferiority. The man unscrupulously sized up her face, chest, waist, abdomen, as well as the pair of long legs that made people's mouth dry under the wide pants. This was no longer a simple beauty. It was a kind of beauty that could conquer anyone in an instant. There was no flaw in her beauty. She completely fulfilled the fantasies of perfection that most people had. If there really was a goddess, she would probably be like this. She didn't look like an ordinary person. She was otherworldly. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the smile in his eyes became more and more intense. Horsewoman, who was following Qin Weibai, tensed up. It seemed that she already had the intention to kill. Your eyes are very presumptuous. Qin Weibai sat down opposite her and said in a calm tone, If Tianlan were here, he would have your eyes gouged out. I just suddenly remembered that someone told me something. Qin Weibai raised her eyebrows. He said that a woman like you shouldn't be conquered by any man by nature. You should conquer all men and conquer the world. You should be a goddess high above, an inviolable queen. As long as he thought of how docile you would be every night, he felt like his heart was being twisted by a knife. He was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He turned a blind eye to the furious horsewoman. He laughed presumptuously and said presumptuously. His tone was full of emotions. Qin Weibai looked at him quietly. Her tone was somewhat puzzled and confused. After a long time, she slowly asked, Jiang Shangyu, are you tired of living? Don't do it. Jiang Shangyu smiled and said, otherwise I can guarantee that I won't regret it. I won't go with you. Li Qingqing finally spoke and said the first sentence after Jiang Shangyu entered the ward. I'm sorry, but now, I don't want to go anywhere. Jiang Shangyu looked at her calmly and shook his head gently. I don't know what will happen if you leave me, but I can be sure that only by my side is the best for you. He thought of the lonely figure hanging in his bedroom in winter again and said in a low voice, I can give you happiness. What I don't want is not happiness. Li Qingqing looked at Jiang Shangyu and said seriously. The car slowly entered the sanatorium. Li Tianlan suddenly smiled and said, it's a bit interesting. What? Lin Yuxian, who was driving, raised his eyebrows slightly. Jiang Shangyu is here. Well, he came to visit Li Shi. He also wants to take your goddess away by force. Li Tianlan shook his head. I really don't know who gave him the courage. Lin Yuxian's face suddenly changed. He wants to take Qingqing by force. It's just a thought. Why are you panicking? Saint is watching. We'll be right there. Li Tianlan moved his body. After tonight, I will let him understand that there are some things that he can't even think about. Under the light, Li Tianlan, who was condensed by the sword energy, began to dissipate little by little, becoming thin and empty. Jiang Shangyu did not relax. Instead, his body tightened again. Li Tianlan cancelled the sword energy projection, which meant that he could appear in the ward at any time. Looking at Li Qingqing, who obviously showed her refusal, Jiang Shangyu took a deep breath, slowly stood up, and took a step in the direction of Li Qingqing. Li Qingqing tilted her head, looked at Jiang Shangyu, and asked softly, do you want to force me? Jiang Shangyu stopped where he was. He looked deeply at the face in front of him, which he had remembered for too long, and whispered, I want to talk to you alone. Of course, the dead won't regret it. Qin Weibai took the menu and ordered a glass of lemonade. Her tone was indifferent. I didn't say that. I have no idea about you. The goddess is high and mighty, but as a mortal, I can still understand. I know what kind of person is suitable for me, and I know what kind of person I like. I was just passing that sentence. Even if I'm guilty, it's not enough for the crime of blasphemy, right? Jiang Shangyu said softly. Qin Weibai did not speak. Her fingers were pointing at the menu. Suddenly, she froze in place and did not look up for a long time. Did it remind you of anything strange? Jiang Shangyu smiled playfully. Do you know the crime of blasphemy? Qin Weibai lowered her head, and her voice was cold. What do you think? Jiang Shangyu laughed. There was a kind of arrogance on his face that had almost never been shown. Blasphemy. In this era, this word could barely be applied to the holy land of Italos. But in another era, when no one was sure whether it was the past or the future, the word blasphemy had almost become a special word in Emperor Dong's palace. Behind this word were the lives of 6 patriarchs of wealthy families, more than 20 dignitaries of various countries, 3 princesses, 3 princes, and 4 invincible realm experts. These people were all defined as blasphemy by Emperor Dong's palace. The most fundamental reason was that they had offended the Empress of Emperor Dong's palace with words or some of their eyes. That was an unimaginably brutal and oppressive absolute rule. The goddess of that era really stood at the height of overlooking all living beings. In front of her, almost no one dared to look directly at that cold and perfect face, except for Emperor Dong. Qin Weibai was in a trance for a moment. She handed the menu to horsewoman standing aside, and her expression gradually became cold. It's not me. Jiang Shangyu laughed. This was not a denial but a fact. Qin Weibai understood what this sentence meant in an instant. She was silent for a few seconds and said, "Where are you now?" "He was asking about you." "Not him." "Well?" Jiang Shangyu narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "Now, I should be negotiating with Li Tianlan in Yuzhou." Qin Weibai completely understood what Jiang Shangyu meant when he said at the beginning, "Don't do anything. Otherwise, it would definitely not be him who would regret." She was now facing Jiang Shangyu at the same time. In Yuzhou, Li Tianlan was also facing Jiang Shangyu. Qin Weibai closed her eyes. Her heartbeat became extremely fierce in an instant. All kinds of messy thoughts swept through her mind like a storm. She subconsciously clenched her hands. At this moment, she suddenly thought of Molad in the Holy Land and his majesty behind him. At that time, it was not her who went to the Holy Land. But she also knew this news. She recalled some details of the chaos in Snow Country, as well as the details of the major forces against Beihai. Forcing herself to calm down, Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes tightly. "You planned the thing in Beihai? You're exaggerating. I just added fuel to the fire. This thing is fundamentally a conflict between Beihai and Zhongzhou state. It's just that Emperor Dong's palace rose too quickly. So I was also involved." Jiang Shangyu said lightly. The lemonade was served. Qin Weibai held the cup and drank the water. She took a deep breath and suddenly turned to look at Horsewoman. "Go to the car and wait for me," she said calmly, and her tone was indisputable. Horsewoman hesitated, then turned and walked out of the cafe. "Wise decision." Jiang Shangyu smiled. Qin Weibai stared at Jiang Shangyu coldly. "You're not dead. That's not surprising." Jiang Shangyu shook her head. "Because I'm not an exception. You're not dead either, aren't you?" "Knights Templar, the Jiang family of South America, East Island." Qin Weibai murmured to herself, "What a big deal. Compared with you, this is nothing. Samsara Palace is amazing. That's what a force should be like. What about me? Now Knights Templar is basically loyal to me, but the Jiang family of South America and East Island are at most cooperating with me. At most, I can occupy some dominance. I'm not as lucky as you. When you went to the Wang family of Beihai and the 24 moves of sword fought against the 6 paths of reincarnation, I hid in the dark. But no one thought that you would be so crazy that you chose to die together with Wang Shengxiao. I had a reason to take action, but I was too late. You smeared the blood of Vermilion Bird and Xuanwu on Shenyuan Feng, and the final outbreak of ruthlessness involved me. When you came back, you could meet Wu Wei, and he could use years of fate to heal your injury. But what about me? 2 deadly poisons and terrifying injuries were in my body. I was lucky to be alive. When your injuries stabilized, I was still on my last breath. When you began to try to recover your cultivation, I was still at death's door. When your cultivation began to stabilize, I found you. We shared the burden of your injuries and barely survived." Jiang Shangyu laughed and said somewhat mockingly, "And then? When you left Zhongzhou state and began to build Samsara Palace, I probably just entered the chi-controlling realm. When the master of Samsara Palace was famous, I hadn't even entered the fire-flaming realm. I can't compare with you. I have everything I have today because I carefully accumulated it little by little. You are different. You have everything you have today because you took it by the way." Qin Weibai listened quietly and looked at Jiang Shangyu indifferently. "So, now you're not going to hide it anymore?" "It's not necessary." Jiang Shangyu chuckled softly. "The time is ripe. Your sword over Mormons decided a lot of things. Next, it should be my time. Why did you accept Wang Xingxiao's invitation back then? To avenge your father? But he had already died at that time, and the Wang family of Beihai was also responsible for your father's death. That was not an invitation." Jiang Shangyu lowered his head and clenched the coffee cup in his hand. He was silent for a long time before he suddenly asked, "Do you have someone you like? The kind of person who would disregard everything for her?" From the first time he saw her, he felt that she was destined to be with him. The cold wind at night blew across the rooftop. Li Qingqing slightly wrapped her coat around herself and said, "What do you want to say to me?" "A lot of things." Jiang Shangyu seemed to want to carve this figure deeply in his eyes. "But I suddenly don't know what to say." Li Qingqing was silent. She lowered her head and slowly tied her long hair into a simple ponytail. Jiang Shangyu walked to the edge of the rooftop, lit a cigarette, took a deep breath, and laughed. "You know, from the first time I saw you, I was sure of one thing. Whether you are a princess, a chess piece, or anything else, I must make you my wife." It's been many years. The smoke rose from the corner of his mouth into the night sky. He muttered to himself, "It has never changed." Many years? Li Qingqing hesitated. In her memory, they had only known each other for 2 or 3 years. "You know what? I've always known your situation in Kunlun City. I know the contradiction between Gu Xingyun and Li Shi. I know the reason why you were caught in the middle and became a victim. What I want to do most in my life is not to fight for hegemony or power. My request has always been very simple. I want my family to live a better life so that my father won't work so hard. I want the person I like to live a happier life and not be so helpless. I want to live like a human being and not be so incompetent. This is all my dream. What's the point of living a life and ruling the world? It's good to be happy, carefree, and free." He looked up at the deep winter night sky of Yuzhou City and murmured, "But some people's starting points are predestined. In this circle, if we want to protect our family, protect our lover, and live like a human being, we have to fight for something and kill some people. A few years ago, at the beginning, I was really powerless. Not to mention living like a human being. Even being alive was a very hard thing. I survived the most desperate period. In the past few years, the Jiang family has developed well. If there is no accident, I will soon go to Kunlun City and bring you out. Whatever you want, as long as I have it, I can give it to you. If I don't have it, I will try my best to give it to you. I have imagined our marriage, a grand wedding, the attention of the world, and making you the happiest person. Half a month, at most half a month, and I will be able to do all of this. It's a pity. Only half a month, and everything may be different." "Maybe." Li Qingqing looked at Jiang Shangyu quietly indifferent. "Come with me, Qingqing." Jiang Shangyu turned around and looked at her. "You can have whatever you want. What Emperor Dong's palace can give you, now the Jiang family can also give you." The wind whistled fiercely on the rooftop at night. Slowly, Li Qingqing shook her head. "Sorry, what do you want to say?" Qin Weibai's voice was cold and indifferent in the soft voice. "You avoided my question." Jiang Shangyu smiled playfully. "Are you saying that until now, you are not sure whether you love Li Tianlan or not? Or are you not sure whether you love Li Tianlan or Dongqing Huangtu?" Qin Weibai twitched the corner of her mouth and said calmly, "Nonsense. Maybe." Jiang Shangyu picked up the cup, took a sip of the cold coffee, and said quietly, "I'm here today with full sincerity, and I hope you won't let my kindness down. We both have things that we value and people that we value. You can look at the world and give Li Tianlan a beautiful country. I'm not so broad-minded. I just want to protect my family and the woman I love. We may have grudges, but on this point, let's put ourselves in each other's shoes. Because if Li Tianlan is hurt, what you will do is what I may do now. Today's meeting is a negotiation, or I beg you. In short, don't force me to be a madman. I hate doing anything at all costs, including standing with Wang Xianxia to deal with you." Qin Weibai's eyes moved, and she said thoughtfully, "That is to say, before the war, the Wang family of Beihai controlled Li Qingqing?" "No, Li Qingqing had committed suicide at that time." "Your father? Well, who is that?" Jiang Shangyu's eyes were as deep as the abyss. After a long silence, he sighed in a low voice. "It's Qingqing's child. Even if the child is not mine, but..." He shook his head fiercely and seemed a little irritated. "I'm the same as you. There are always some feelings, aren't there?" Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes and played with the lemon water in her hand. After a while, she said slowly, "No, we are not the same. I love him." Thinking of Li Tianlan, Qin Weibai's eyes were gentle and somewhat intoxicating. It was a kind of joy from the heart. I can also be sure that he loves me too. A few years ago in Huading, when he saw me for the first time, I saw the emotion in his eyes that may not be strong but was obvious enough. She smiled softly and looked at Jiang Shangyu, whose face was a little ugly. I can do anything for him, and I also believe that he can do anything for me. I am his woman, and in the future, I will even be the Empress of East Emperor, or even the Empress of the whole dark world. We have each other, in the past and in the future. So, we are not the same. She took a step back gently. Li Qingqing's expression was as indifferent as a beautiful landscape painting. Full of sincerity and frank love came to her face, so heavy that she even found it difficult to resist. She slowly shook her head. Perhaps Mother is right. What I want and need the most right now is freedom. Master Jiang, I can't go with you. I'm sorry. I can give you freedom. Jiang Shangyu suddenly took a step forward. No one will restrain you, neither will I. On the contrary, if you leave with me, you will be freer than you are in Emperor Dong's palace. Much freer. Why don't you understand? You are destined to be my woman. Come with me, and you can do whatever you want by my side. I've heard people say that the so-called freedom is not that we can do whatever we want. It is that we can do whatever we don't want to do. Some thin clothes fluttered in the night wind. Li Qingqing smiled faintly. She was quiet and tranquil, like a lotus. I don't want to go with you. It is my freedom. You want to take me by force. No matter what you will give me in the future, in fact, I am not free. Jiang Shangyu was stunned. Thank you, Master Jiang. Li Qingqing said softly, thank you for your love, but for me, I don't think it is a good thing to accept a relationship. As for marriage, now that I have freedom, I won't think about marriage. Maybe I won't think about it in my life. I'm very grateful for your love, but, she smiled and said the cruelest words in the most direct manner, I don't love you. She doesn't love you. Qin Weibai looked at Jiang Shangyu, who was a little gloomy. Li Qingqing doesn't belong to you in the past or the future. You have never owned her. Maybe you can give up everything for her. You want to change her fate, but in fact, you didn't do what you could. On the contrary, Tianlan has changed her fate. She is free. You have the right to pursue her, but you are not qualified to control her life under the excuse of loving her. You are not even qualified to sit here and talk about this topic. Do you think this argument can persuade me? Jiang Shangyu's expression changed little by little and finally became expressionless. His voice was a little cold. I'm not paranoid, but it doesn't mean that I don't insist. I was born as a human being, and I have always wanted to live like a human being. Everyone has something that they must insist on and can't give up. I don't want to persuade anyone. This is just a fact. Qin Weibai's voice was light. A fact? If the fact is that Li Tianlan met Dongqing Rushi first, fulfilled the engagement and returned to the Dongqing clan, and then met you, but didn't talk to you, would you be willing to give up? Jiang Shangyu asked with a sneer. I'm different from you. I helped Tianlan. The final battle of Heaven Capital, the chaos of Snow Country, and now the merger of Samsara Palace into Emperor Dong's palace were all just help. I never tried to control Tianlan's life and path. If what you said really happened, then I wouldn't give up. I would pursue him and even seduce him. As long as I stayed with him, I would do anything, but I would never control him. And your assumption is just an assumption. In fact, after he left the Li family, the first person he met was me. We may be the same, because we both have advantages that others can't compare with, advantages that can change everything. I didn't change anything and still became Tianlan's woman. And you didn't change anything. You could have made Li Qingqing fall in love with you and never leave you. When you could have done that, you didn't do anything. This can only be said to be your stupidity. Don't you think it's too late to make up for it after Tianlan made his move? I'm not here to talk about this today. Jiang Shangyu was silent for a long time before he said in a low voice, if I have to say, I can only say that my situation was not very good in the past few years. You can call the wind and summon the rain, but for me, until more than 2 years ago, it was very difficult to simply live. I wasn't sure what kind of future I could give Qingqing, so I naturally wouldn't provoke her. But it doesn't matter, I'm here today for only one request. Why do you think I'll agree? Qin Weibai looked at Jiang Shangyu expressionlessly. Because of you. Jiang Shangyu said blandly, it may not be appropriate to talk about the other you, but you and I both know that you have fallen in Mormons. You, who Li Tianlan cares about most, have fallen in Mormons. Me and me, you and you, are essentially the same, but this is our feeling. At least, in Li Tianlan's eyes, you are just a fake. If you promise me, then the one in front of you today is not Jiang Shangyu. You can stay with Li Tianlan and spend the rest of your life with him. If you refuse me, then the one sitting here today is me. Two of me appear in Yuzhou and Tianan at the same time. What will Li Tianlan think? I can help you keep a secret, and I can naturally see through your disguise. No matter how similar a fake is, it can't be completely real. Qin Weibai slowly stood up. Jiang Shangyu looked at him and narrowed his eyes. The choice is between me and you. You should know what this means. To you, Qingqing isn't someone you can't give up on. Also, this can't be considered giving up. I'm the most suitable man for her and she is destined to be my woman. Only by being together with me can she obtain true happiness. Swish! Qin Weibai raised her palm. Half a glass of lemon water was directly splashed on Jiang Shangyu's face. Jiang Shangyu slowly wiped his face and smiled with a cold expression. You are the fake, Qin Weibai said lightly. When she turned around, her slender and thin figure drew a long shadow in the moonlight. The shadow moved slowly and finally disappeared on the rooftop, blending into the light. The cold chill swept the whole world with the airflow. Jiang Shangyu stood there and watched Li Qingqing's figure disappear completely. He closed his eyes with some pain. Obviously, your courtship failed. In the indifferent voice, Li Tianlan's real body appeared in front of him. Jiang Shangyu opened his eyes and smiled. It's just temporary. Still not giving up. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. She is destined to be my woman. As time goes by, she will find that only I am the most suitable for her. Jiang Shangyu took a deep breath and looked at Li Tianlan with complicated eyes. The Jiang family plotted against Beijiang and ruined Li Tianlan's plan. But Li Tianlan took Li Qingqing away and ruined his life. He laughed self-deprecatingly, looked at Li Tianlan, and said seriously, if you are willing to help me, then I will owe you a favor. At the right time, it is not impossible for the Jiang family to return Beijiang to you. We have many choices in our lives. Different choices represent different directions. Our greatest freedom is the right to make choices. Jiang Shangyu looked at Li Tianlan seriously and held out his hand to him. The lemon water slid down his face and dripped on his clothes. Jiang Shangyu lowered his head and wiped it casually. He said calmly, Qingqing has the life toxin of Kunlun City in her body. There are also strong spiritual hints. You Donglai can solve the first one. You can solve the second one. Solve the problem and help me get Qingqing. This is all I ask. If you help me, I can let you get everything. If you refuse me, I can let you lose everything. He looked up at Qin Weibai. What's your choice? Qin Weibai looked at him quietly. After a long time, she took a deep breath and said calmly, I am tired. Goodbye. That was her answer. Not having an answer was also an answer. She nodded to Jiang Shangyu and turned to leave. Jiang Shangyu sat in his seat motionless. He looked at Qin Weibai's back quietly and narrowed his eyes. He looked extremely dangerous. The cold wind blew. Jiang Shangyu's windbreaker fluttered backward. His palm slowly reached out to Li Tianlan. It was steady and peaceful, as if it contained great power. Li Tianlan looked at the palm calmly. The moonlight shone down. In the cold light, this scene seemed to be completely frozen. Jiang Shangyu's voice sounded almost word by word. We can choose many things, many directions, and many positions, which represent different situations and destinies. Now, Your Majesty Li Dun. Jiang Shangyu's palm stopped steadily in front of Li Tianlan, as if it had stopped for many years. His voice was deep and oppressive. Tell me your choice. Do you choose to be my friend? Or an enemy? Chapter 946. friend or enemy. Most of the time, the so-called fate and different directions were chosen in an instant. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and looked at Jiang Shangyu's outstretched palm. Jiang Shangyu's expression was calm and serious. The smile that seemed to cover his face at all times disappeared completely. His voice was clear, firm and steady. This was the Jiang Shangyu he was familiar with, fragile and somewhat weak. He might be a genius in other people's eyes, but in Li Tianlan's eyes, it was just a piece of cake to kill him. Jiang Shangyu did not have the strength to threaten him, let alone the power to threaten him. But at this moment, he really felt a sense of oppression that was not strong but real. The hand reached in front of him, and his life seemed to really have two directions. To the left or to the right. I think of our first meeting. Li Tianlan's voice was calm and cold. Jiang Shangyu frowned slightly. You mean in East Island? Li Tianlan glanced at him. I'm not sure what the reason is, but I can be sure of my feeling. Maybe it's your eyes when I first saw you, or maybe it's your expression. It seems that everything is normal, but every time I think about it, I have a very uncomfortable feeling. You can say it's intuition. From that moment on, I was sure that we would not be friends. His voice was clear, and his eyes were clear and rational. Jiang Shangyu looked at him for a long time. So, he said slowly, Your Majesty, are you rejecting my kindness? Your kindness means nothing to me. We are not friends. As for whether we are enemies or not, I don't care. If I have to make it clear, you are not qualified to be my friend or my enemy. Li Qingqing is not my private property. I brought her out of Kunlun City, and I didn't want to control her. She is free, and I will respect her will. You must also respect it. There is no possibility of a deal in this matter. Jiang Shangyu narrowed his eyes. His expression became indifferent little by little. The palms slowly retracted. The corner of his mouth moved, and he was about to speak. Think about the consequences before you speak. Li Tianlan said blandly, I didn't kill you today because I saw your sincerity and respect Li Qingqing. If you don't know what's good for you, you don't have to go back today. Jiang Shangyu's expression froze slightly. He laughed. I see. In that case, Your Majesty. He bowed slightly with a meaningful look in his eyes. Goodbye. Li Tianlan did not respond. Jiang Shangyu jumped directly from the rooftop. His figure landed on the ground and strode out of the sanatorium. He did not look back from the beginning to the end. Li Tianlan looked at his back quietly. He could feel Jiang Shangyu's determination. That was not giving up. Instead, it was a determination to do whatever it took. Lin Yuxian appeared silently beside Li Tianlan. His eyes were a little complicated. What will he do? I don't know. Li Tianlan shook his head expressionlessly. But I have an intuition that it might be a wrong decision not to kill him tonight. Then why not kill him? Lin Yuxian had some doubts. Jiang Shangyu's status in Zhongzhou state was not low now. But if Li Tianlan insisted on killing him, no one could stop him. There might be trouble afterward, but Emperor Dong's palace could handle it. In that case, why not do it? Because of Li Qingqing. Li Tianlan smiled and said, The life of Li Shi and Gu Xingyun is not harmonious. Li Qingqing grew up with them. You know what she thinks about marriage and feelings without thinking. She even made it clear just now that she would not consider the idea of marriage in this life. She left you such a rival in love and let you compete with each other. Maybe it can help you. Otherwise, if you only rely on yourself to pester Li Qingqing, it is basically impossible. Damn, you don't believe in my charm? Lin Yuxian stared and was a little speechless. This is my brother-in-law's understanding of my brother-in-law. Li Tianlan laughed. Lin Yuxian chuckled without emotion and suddenly said, That's not the whole reason, is it? Li Tianlan nodded. One more thing. If I kill him tonight, I feel that there will be trouble too. It's better to keep him alive and see who is behind him first. Walking out of the sanatorium, Jiang Shangyu, who did not feel embarrassed at all without a special car to pick him up, waited for a long time before he got a taxi. The taxi went straight to the airport. In the back of the car, Jiang Shangyu took out his mobile phone and dialed a number. The phone was quickly connected, but there was no sound. How is it? Jiang Shangyu coughed and asked. The negotiations have fallen apart. On the other end of the phone, the calm voice sounded emotionless. I was splashed with a glass of lemonade. Heh, doesn't she care that she's a fake? Jiang Shangyu sneered. She said I am exhausted. Jiang Shangyu fell silent and tried to think about the meaning of this sentence. After a while, he slowly said, I can imagine, but I can't understand. What about you? On the other end of the phone, His Majesty who was far away in Xianyuan City asked. The negotiations have fallen apart. Jiang Shangyu said calmly. His Majesty sighed. You're really useless. Jiang Shangyu said expressionlessly, keep scolding. Don't stop. Be ruthless. His Majesty was speechless. He was also Jiang Shangyu. Their experiences might be different, but in essence, they were the same person, and their thinking was completely the same. If they swore, they would be scolding themselves, and even the words they said were the same. Let's snatch him. After a moment of silence, the two of them spoke in unison. Let's take him back first. They spoke in unison as well. After a short silence, Jiang Shangyu agreed and looked at the scenery outside the rough car. We'll talk about it when I get to Xianyuan City. On the rooftop, Li Tianlan accompanied Lin Yuxian to smoke a cigarette. He glanced at him and said with a smile, Hey, are you still depressed? Don't think so much. There will always be opportunities in the future. If I were you, I would go to get close to Li Qingqing now. What are you thinking about here? Lin Yuxian snorted. If you were me, would you really go? Li Tianlan thought for a moment. It's not easy to be a bootlicker. You can also catch up with my sister like this. God is blind. Lin Yuxian looked disdainful. How many times have I said that it's your sister who chased me? Li Tianlan sighed. We're not the same, not the same. The phone suddenly rang. Li Tianlan took out his mobile phone and glanced at the number. His eyes softened slightly, and he directly pressed the answer button. He said with a smile, What are you doing? Looking at the night view. Qin Weibai on the other end of the phone smiled softly and said softly, The night view of Xianyuan City is very beautiful. Li Tianlan nodded. I'll go back tomorrow. I'll accompany you then. Qin Weibai was silent for a moment and said softly, I'm afraid not. Tianlan, I have to go back to the headquarters of the Lin clan and come back in a few days. The problem in South America? Li Tianlan frowned slightly. Qin Weibai hesitated for a moment and nodded. Yes, but it won't be long. I'll be back soon. Chapter 947. The phone was hung up in Li Tianlan's laughter. Xianyuan City was brightly lit at night. The streets were clean and tidy, the buildings were exquisite and magnificent, the grass was green, the flowers were in full bloom, and the trees were neat. The lights were on. It was as if the entire city had been draped in a colorful coat of light. The night here was not so noisy and bustling, but there was a kind of vitality from silence and beauty. Qin Weibai quietly looked at the scenes outside the window. She didn't say a word and just watched in silence. Why do you suddenly want to go back to the headquarters of the Lin clan? Horsewoman drove and suddenly asked in a low voice. It's really beautiful. Qin Weibai looked out of the window and muttered to herself. Then she laughed at herself. I'm afraid it's not mine. Horsewoman frowned and was a little puzzled. I just saw Jiang Shangyu. Qin Weibai lowered her head and whispered. Horsewoman responded. She also saw it, although she didn't know what Jiang Shangyu talked to the boss. When I met Jiang Shangyu, Tianlan also saw Jiang Shangyu. Qin Weibai's voice was deep and quiet. The black Rolls-Royce suddenly stopped in the middle of driving. Qin Weibai's body swayed and leaned forward slightly. Horsewoman's face changed dramatically. She suddenly looked back at Qin Weibai in disbelief. Qin Weibai was in Tiannan. Li Tianlan was in Yuzhou. The two of them saw Jiang Shangyu at the same time? How is this possible? Horsewoman subconsciously raised her voice, a little incredulous. Nothing is impossible. Qin Weibai said indifferently, just like now, I'm in Tiannan, but I'm also in the headquarters of the Lin clan. Horsewoman breathed violently. At that moment, she was completely stunned. Horsewoman frowned tightly and looked solemn. He and the palace master, probably the same. It's hard to explain what's going on. But I can come back, so can he. Qin Weibai whispered. Horsewoman's brain was a little confused. After a while, she understood what it meant. We have enemies. Horsewoman took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, an unimaginable enemy. There were 12 supermasters in the Samsara Palace. But the status of supermasters was also high and low. In reality, Fire Flaming Realm, one of the 12 supermasters, was naturally the most important, and he was once the only supermaster of the Invincible Realm. Next were the military counselor and the saint. And then there were the dukes and generals whose strength was only second to the saint and the military advisor. Instead, there were the knights whose strength might not be the best but were absolutely loyal. They knew the origin of the palace master from the very beginning. They also knew the inside story of the initial rise and rapid development of the Samsara Palace. The 12 supermasters were very high profile in the dark world. Lurk in the shadows, the saber of Zhongzhou State. A strategist who had absolute control over the economy. The Flourishing Age Fund, whose funds could sweep the world, certainly had Han Dongluo's ability, but it also had the foresight of the palace master. For more than a decade, they seized the opportunities again and again, and the Samsara Palace completed its accumulation at the fastest speed. The core of all this was the master of Samsara Palace. She was the master of Samsara Palace who knew what would happen before it happened. But now, the master of Samsara Palace was in an extremely bad state. She was almost dead. Jiang Shangyu appeared. Jiang Shangyu, who could predict the future like the master of Samsara Palace, appeared. Horsewoman couldn't imagine how powerful Jiang Shangyu had secretly cultivated. The fact that he could openly appear in front of Qin Weibai and Li Tianlan already showed his attitude. He was so confident that he could almost be fearless of everything. It's not that serious, Qin Weibai shook her head. His state is a little special. When I came back that year, my foster father spent a lot of effort to stabilize my injury. Then, at the earliest time, I found myself. Jiang Shangyu was not so lucky. He has been in a bad state these years and can't do too many things. But, since he dared to appear in front of me, it means that he is indeed ready. It's a little troublesome, but it's not impossible to solve. Horsewoman was silent for a long time before she whispered, what was Jiang Shangyu's strength in his heyday? He broke through the peak of the invincible realm and was only half a step away from the real supreme. He was a person who really exerted the heavenly king heart to the extreme. His willpower was indestructible, and his cultivation progressed rapidly. He could constantly make up for his shortcomings while making progress. He was not the same as the trash in Kunlun City who also had the heavenly king heart but was not even in the invincible realm. In that era, Tianlan in his peak state could ignore everything. After Tianlan, Wang Tianzong managed to enter that realm, but it was not perfect. Then Wang Shengxiao was the closest to that realm. After the father and son of the Wang family of Beihai, it was Jiang Shangyu, followed by Lin Yuxian of the Lin clan. If we talk about the combat capability in his heyday, Jiang Shangyu in his peak state is stronger than Mr. Lin and Li Guangtu. If we really want to compare, he is probably similar to Tribulation in his peak state and Wang Tianzong when he left Reki City. If it weren't for Ruthless, I wouldn't have been able to kill him and Wang Shengxiao. Well, at that time, Ruthless didn't break out with all his strength, but really self-destructed. It wanted to kill not only Wang Shengxiao and Jiang Shangyu, but also me. It destroyed everything, and then it became what it is now. Horsewoman wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He has the blood of vermilion bird and black tortoise that have evolved to the last stage in his body. At present, no one in the world can solve this level of poison. At most, they can barely suppress it. It is impossible for him to return to his peak state. Now, Tianlan is only short of accumulation and the final transformation from the real supreme realm. With Ruthless, he can't threaten Tianlan's safety. But since he dared to appear, It means that he should also have the ability to protect himself. Qin Weibai's voice gradually became a little low. I'm not worried about what will happen to Tianlan. Now, except for himself, there should be no one who can hurt him. Jiang Shangyu is a bit tricky, but there will be time to deal with him in the future. Her voice became softer and softer. What I'm worried about now is how to tell Tianlan about this. This should be told to His Majesty. Horsewoman was slightly shocked. How can I not tell him? Qin Weibai smiled bitterly. It's meaningless to hide such a serious thing. We must let Tianlan know the possible consequences of Jiang Shangyu and his current strength. How can he not tell him? Horsewoman fell silent. So, she was silent for a long time before hesitantly saying, "Did you go back to the headquarters of the Lin clan to see the situation of the palace master?" Yes and no. Qin Weibai shook her head, leaned against the seat, and closed her eyes. I'm really tired, she whispered, staying with On. I'm very happy, but also very tired. I know I am. We have the same thoughts, the same behavior, and even when we stand together, we have the same feeling. Can you understand? When I'm with me, it's not that I know what you're thinking. It's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking. My thoughts, senses, movements, everything is exactly the same without each other. I am me. When I'm with her, at a close distance, I don't need to read the notebook that deepens the impression at all. I can directly read the pictures that I haven't experienced in that era, but I have experienced them from my mind. We are the same person. I firmly believe it, accept it, and even believe it. But it's still very tiring. When I see Tianlan, I can take it for granted that we are the same person. But when I'm with him, every time he looks at me, hugs me, and even presses on me, I feel that he is looking at another person. That person is me, but not me. This kind of feeling. Qin Weibai's voice was a little desperate. Do you understand? Horsewoman was silent for a long time before she shook her head slightly. In fact, whether I am me or not, in Tianlan's eyes, maybe it's different? In Military Counselor's heart, it's the same in Flaming Fire's heart, and it should be the same in his heart. So, Jiang Shangyu said that I'm an imposter. Oh, I really can't be an imposter. In fact, before this, we knew the existence of Jiang Shangyu. I'm just not sure who he is. I imagined the day when all this would be exposed, but I didn't expect it to come so soon. Jiang Shangyu is an enemy. His Majesty may not believe what he said. Horsewoman comforted with a pale face. I'm not sure if it's a lie, but things have come to this point. Maybe it's not a lie, but a lie. Qin Weibai muttered to herself, I'm really tired. You don't understand that kind of feeling. I love him as much as I love him. It's a completely consistent, strong feeling. But in his heart, I may be different. I don't want to go on like this. She whispered, every time I see myself in the Lin clan, I will firmly believe that we are the same person. So I want to go back and see my own state. In any case, at the right time, I will tell Tianlan everything. I'm his woman, not my substitute. I want him to accept the real me, nothing else. It's hard to understand. Horsewoman was silent for a long time before she said frankly, I can understand your incomprehension. Qin Weibai smiled. That's why I feel so tired. Horsewoman hesitated. I mean what if His Majesty doesn't accept your identity? If he thinks you are not you, like Flaming Fire, what will you do then? There's no way. Qin Weibai's eyes were calm and a little empty. With Jiang Shangyu's existence, this seemingly flawless secret will be revealed sooner or later. Tianlan will know it sooner or later. The only difference is whether I tell him or someone else tells him. It's better to get the pain over with. She whispered, when I come back from the Lin clan, I will confess everything to him. Even, the light outside the window shone on her face. That exquisite and perfect dreamy face was pale and almost transparent. She shook her head hard and whispered, even if it's my end. Chapter 948. In the dead of night, Li Tianlan sat on the rooftop of the sanatorium and enjoyed the breeze. Once again, Wuqing turned into Li Tianlan and sat with him. The vast and majestic sword energy fluctuated with its appearance. The dense sword energy spread from the rooftop and eventually covered the whole sanatorium. This sword chi was so perfect and flawless that it didn't even have a single flaw. Instead, it looked like an airtight domain. Li Tianlan reached out his hand and poked the sword energy around him in boredom. The sword energy was like a transparent cover. As he stretched his fingers forward, the sword energy broke one after another like a cover. The small holes appeared one after another and were silently patched by Wuxia. Then he poked it again and patched it again slowly. A man and a sword played the game out of boredom. Eventually, the whole sanatorium was filled with surging sword light. "Your Majesty!" A voice suddenly rang out at the door of the rooftop. Saint walked over with a food box and a pot of wine. He said helplessly, "What are you doing?" Li Tianlan answered blankly, as if he couldn't react. Wuxia silently withdrew the domain of sword energy and turned it into a cloak. He put it on Li Tianlan to block the cold wind. Saint shook his head with a bitter smile. He had been pursuing swordsmanship all his life. He was the sword master of Mount Shu. Later, he became a saint. He still learned Dongqing Huangtu's swordsmanship, which was also Li Tianlan's swordsmanship. Now that he had entered the invincible realm, his perception of swordsmanship had reached the extreme. He had fallen asleep, but Li Tianlan and Wuqiang's game seemed to be silent. However, the surging sword energy was like a dazzling light to Saint, easily dispelling all his sleepiness. It was his boss who disturbed his dreams. What else could he do? He could only pack up and rush over. Can't sleep? Saint walked to Li Tianlan and sat down beside him. He opened the food box. There was only a stack of spiced beef in the food box. It was simple, but it was enough. There were 2 empty cups beside the beef. Saint took out the cups, handed one to Li Tianlan, and poured wine for him. The wine was mellow and slightly warm. "Last time I went back to Tianan, I asked for a batch of good wine from Senior Yu. The Huadiao wine he made is very famous even in the Hidden Dragon Sea Council." Saint said with a smile. Li Tianlan's eyes were in a trance. He took a sip of wine and became more and more silent. "His Majesty can't sleep? Is there something on your mind?" Saint asked again. "I'm fine. It's just, I don't know what you're thinking." Li Tianlan was somewhat absent-minded. He really didn't know what he was thinking, but his mind was a little chaotic, and he didn't feel sleepy at all. He grabbed a piece of beef with sauce and put it into his mouth. He shook his head hard and took another sip of wine. "I'm thinking about a lot of things," he said softly. "The future of Emperor Dong's palace, my future, I miss the Li family, my grandpa, the carefree life of the Wang family of Beihai and the Lin clan, my own life experience, a lot of things. It's a mess, or maybe I don't think about anything." "Your Majesty is thinking about the Dongqing clan?" Saint asked with a smile after a moment of silence. "Maybe," Li Tianlan nodded. "Parents, dead. This word is very strange." He gulped down the wine and shook his head slightly. There were some things that were completely different from saying it out loud. Li Shi, who sobered up, told his life experience in the clearest manner as the person involved. It was a very strange feeling. For a long time, he didn't quite understand why the Dongqing clan would give him unconditionally. He didn't understand why the giant group made plans with him as the core. He didn't understand why Dongqing Wudi and Bai Qingqian accepted Qin Weibai and Wang Yuetong so easily. He didn't understand why Bai Qingqian and the Dongqing clan almost turned against each other and became enemies. He didn't understand why Bai Qingqian and the Dongqing clan almost fell out and became enemies. He slowly realized something. And everything Li Shi said was the answer to all his incomprehensible questions. Li Tianlan's heart was a little chaotic, but he couldn't tell what specific emotion it was. It was a very subtle psychological activity, so subtle that he didn't even form any specific emotion or feeling. He fought with Gu Xingyun, attended the meeting of the parliament, watched the changes in Beijiang, listened to Lin Fengting talk about the origin of murderous weapons, and watched Jiang Shangyu perform to his heart's content. Today was undoubtedly very lively, and he lived a fulfilling life. When everything was over and he was alone, Li Tianlan's mind became a little complicated. "I thought your Majesty was worried about the next decisive battle in Beihai." Saint smiled. Li Tianlan shook his head and didn't speak. He really didn't think about it. Even if he knew the existence of Wuyo. No matter whether it was self-confidence or brainlessness, Li Tianlan's heart was firm. He was sure that he was invincible now, and he didn't care who his opponent was. Subtle footsteps sounded from behind the two of them, and they didn't hide it. Li Tianlan and Saint turned back at the same time. Li Shi, who was dressed neatly and looked a little pale, appeared at the door of the rooftop. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. "Are you going out?" he asked directly. Li Shi nodded and whispered, "I will come back before I go to Xianyuan City tomorrow." Li Tianlan nodded and asked subconsciously, "Where are we going?" Li Shi shook her head and didn't say much. She had a free identity, and from tomorrow on, a new life. If this night was a farewell to the past, then Li Shi always felt that she should say thank you to some people. Li Tianlan took a deep look at her and didn't ask any more questions. He just said, "Be careful on the way. Go early and come back early." Li Shi said yes and turned to leave. Saint watched her back gradually disappear, then shook his head and whispered, "It's so late, Your Majesty. Where did she say she was going?" Li Tianlan was silent for a while, then said softly, "I don't know." At the same time, Tianan, Xianyuan City. In an exquisite hotel suite in the city center, Jiang Shangyu opened the door and saw himself standing outside the door. "I just received the news." Without any pleasantries, Jiang Shangyu said, "Qin Weibai has left Tianan." There was an inexplicable aura surging in the room. The space was slightly distorted. A blurry and hazy cloud and starlight completely enveloped his body. He became His Majesty again. It should be the problem of the Jiang family of South America. After all, she is the patriarch of the Lin clan. His Majesty said, not surprised at all. "It's a pity. If she stayed in Xianyuan City?" Jiang Shangyu shook his head slightly. Everyone was afraid of the fallen master of Samsara Palace, but in terms of force, no one would be afraid of Qin Weibai. Many people were afraid of His Majesty, but no one was afraid of Jiang Shangyu. Jiang Shangyu was too young to become a real expert of the invincible realm. His Majesty was different. His physical strength was fixed. In terms of strength, what he needed was not progress, but recovery. What was more, Qin Weibai basically knew nothing about martial arts. If he could control him, Li Tianlan wouldn't be able to hold on to Li Qingqing. How can it be so simple? His Majesty shook his head, was silent for a while, and asked, "How's Dad?" "There's no problem," Jiang Shangyu said. "The pension will be in place within 3 days. During this time, Dad will talk to some people in Beijiang and control them so that there won't be any accidents. In other words, control Beijiang so that there won't be any accidents." 3 days, His Majesty whispered to himself, nodded, and said, "Then 3 days later, I'll fight Li Tianlan." Jiang Shangyu raised his eyebrows slightly. "Then I'll start to sleep tomorrow." His Majesty nodded and said slowly, "Let's sleep longer this time. 3 days later, I'll fight Li Tianlan, and at the same time, it will officially start the final battle in Beihai and the chaos in East Island. In order to prevent accidents, don't stop sleeping." "There's not enough nutrient solution." Jiang Shangyu frowned slightly. "I know, so I'll solve everything as soon as possible." His Majesty smiled. "If everything goes well, when I wake up, Li Tianlan should have died. He refused to be my friend, so I'll let him know how serious the consequences of his refusal will be." Jiang Shangyu shrugged. "Be careful. I don't think Li Tianlan is so simple now. That's how I feel. Of course, I know." His Majesty's voice was calm. "That's why we need this final battle as a test." He took out his mobile phone, opened the address book, and directly dialed Li Guangtu's number. The phone rang twice, and then it was picked up. Li Guangtu's deep voice sounded a little dignified. "What's the matter?" "Don't be nervous." His Majesty smiled. "Nothing has changed. I'm just telling you a sudden decision." Li Guangtu was silent for a moment. On the other end of the phone, he seemed to look at the time, and then his voice became a little irritated. "Say it. 3 days later, I'll challenge Li Tianlan." His Majesty's voice was calm and firm. Li Guangtu suddenly fell silent. He seemed to be trying hard to digest the news. After a while he asked, "Why?" "It doesn't matter." His Majesty's voice was calm. "Well, it doesn't matter," Li Guangtu repeated, and his voice became lower and lower. "So, you want me to cooperate with you?" The original plan was to cooperate with His Majesty in the final battle in Beihai, sneak attack Li Tianlan, and kill him with one blow. But His Majesty, who was hiding in the dark, suddenly decided to come out. Didn't he need to consider the final battle in Beihai? "No, there's no need," His Majesty said blandly. "I'll test his strength first. Believe me, for now, I'm one of the people who knows Li Tianlan, Wuxia, and the 13th floor the best. Only when I make a move can I determine his current state. This final battle will attract everyone's attention. Taking advantage of this opportunity, my friends and I will complete the final infiltration in these 3 days. Your Highness, if there's nothing else, we can probably enter Beihai tomorrow to make the early preparations." Li Guangtu chuckled and said in a strange tone, "Attract everyone's attention? Are you sure that the challenge won't be regarded as a clown and then completely ignored?" Jiang Shangyu said softly, "In this era, no one dares to ignore me, including Li Tianlan." Chapter 949. At dawn, Dongqing Wudi opened his eyes and found that the warm, soft, and fragrant body beside him seemed to have left for a long time. Half of the quilt had become cold, just like the feeling in the past many years. He was in a trance for a while, as if he was not sure whether it was reality or a dream. After more than 10 seconds, he laughed at himself, sat up slowly, put on his clothes, and walked out of the room. The lights were on in the corridor of the villa outside the door. Because it was on the 4th floor, in a more private space, the small reception area at the corner at the end of the corridor had been transformed into a small kitchen. Dongqing Wudi sniffed and his expression became softer. Bai Qingqian, who got up early, was frying eggs in the small kitchen. Beside her was cooked porridge and a few strangely shaped deep-fried pancakes that had been completed. Hungry, Dongqing Wudi walked to the kitchen and looked at his wife. He laughed and said, "If I wait a little longer, Sister Wu will probably get up. Why did you cook in person today?" "I made breakfast for both of us." Bai Qingqian, who was wearing an apron, put the fried eggs on the plate and whispered, "I have a flight this afternoon." Dongqing Wudi froze for a moment and then fell silent. Bai Qingqian was the speaker of Liaodong. Naturally, she could not stay in Yuzhou. During this time, she had been holding meetings in Yuzhou. There was less than a year before the election, and all aspects were sensitive. Today, she would go to the Hidden Dragon Sea to attend a speakers' conference of Zhongzhou State, which was also the highlight of this series of meetings, or even the finale. This meeting could basically determine some things that all parties had been psychologically prepared for, and even determine Bai Qingqian's new position after the election. Then she would rush back to Liaodong overnight. The next time the couple would meet would probably be the election in October next year. "I may not have time to see you off. It depends on the situation. I'll try my best to make time." Dongqing Wudi was silent for a moment and whispered, "No need." Bai Qingqian scooped 2 bowls of porridge and placed some delicate and delicious side dishes on the table. "You do what you need to do. I'll try my best to come back during the Spring Festival." Dongqing Wudi gave a wry smile and shook his head. The Spring Festival was a holiday for ordinary people, but for them, it was impossible for them to be idle at all, especially in the year before the general election. It was almost impossible for the speakers to leave their posts. Even if Bai Qingqian could really come back, Dongqing Wudi would be too busy during the Spring Festival. He had to go to various places in Zhongzhou State on behalf of the army headquarters to pay New Year's greetings to the soldiers and inspect their work. Can't bear to part with it. Bai Qingqian sat down, raised her eyebrows, and said with a faint smile, "At most, I can return to Yuzhou in a year. Can't you wait a year?" "How is this a year?" Dongqing Wudi sighed and frowned. He no longer had the demeanor of a god of massacre. "I've waited for more than 20 years before I tasted the sweetness." Bai Qingqian's face turned red. She angrily picked up her chopsticks and knocked Dongqing Wudi on the head, saying bitterly, "You're talking nonsense." "It's the truth." Dongqing Wudi felt a little helpless. Bai Qingqian held her chopsticks, and her face became redder. The relationship between them had been stiff for more than 20 years, and they almost became enemies. Although their relationship had eased a little in recent years, as a husband and wife, they had only recently started to sleep together. Dongqing Wudi was reluctant to leave, and Bai Qingqian naturally didn't want to leave. But she had responsibilities. What else could she do but leave? She lowered her head and took a sip of porridge. She said calmly, "Isn't the Black Dragon Army in Longjiang?" Dongqing Wudi nodded subconsciously. Bai Qingqian glared at him. "I can't come back during the Spring Festival. Can't you inspect the northeast?" Ugh. Dongqing Wudi suddenly came to his senses. He giggled and nodded. "Yes, you're right. It's settled. I'll inspect your place during the Spring Festival." Bai Qingqian snorted softly, drank the porridge, and asked casually, "After the election, your part-time job should be removed, right?" Dongqing Wudi nodded and said, "It's not necessarily after the election. It could be before." He was the executive minister of the army headquarters, and his part-time job was the commander of the Border Control Corps. In the entire army headquarters, the Border Control Corps occupied a very important core position. The commander's rank of marshal was enough to show the importance that Zhongzhou state attached to the Border Control Corps. After Di Jiang resigned, Dongqing Wudi had been holding this position for more than 2 years, which was a miracle. Before and after the election, Dongqing Wudi had to step down from this position. The academics, the Southeast Group, and the Prince Group were all reluctant to let Dongqing Wudi continue to hold this position. Dongqing Wudi's prestige was too high, especially in the Border Control Corps. He had been the commander for more than 20 years, and he was the soul and core of hundreds of thousands of troops in the Border Control Corps. Although he was now the commander, as long as he was still in the Border Control Corps, even if he was just a soldier as long as he was there would be no room for others to intervene in the Border Control Corps. Other groups would rather let a person from the giant group take control of the Border Control Corps than see Dongqing Wudi continue to occupy this position, especially the Southeast Group. This position was originally traded from the Dongqing clan with great difficulty and finally given away. The grievance and helplessness were indescribable. Naturally, they wanted to regain some of the right to speak in the Border Control Corps. This position had now become an important bargaining chip for the giant group to trade with all parties in the election, and the benefits that could be traded had even exceeded expectations. "What about the successor?" Bai Qingqian whispered. "Is it the Eagle King of the Li family? Or Thunder God?" This issue was also the focus of many people's attention, and it could be said to be the most sensitive focus before and after the election. Dongqing Wudi took a deep breath and frowned. After a while, he shook his head and said, "It's hard to say now. The Eagle King has enough qualifications, but some people are talking about his lack of experience in leading troops for so many years. Thunder God's qualifications are a little worse, and he's not even a general. In short, there are obstacles in front of both of them. In this respect, although we cooperate with the Southeast also has its own opinion. At the end of the day, they're not really against the Eagle King or Thunder God. Either of them is fine. What they want is some other positions in the Border Control Corps after the two of them go up. So we can push any one of them up now, and then it's nothing more than a deal. The reason why we haven't issued this appointment now is that we haven't reached a new balance. To be honest, we can give up some positions, but we don't want to give too many. The current situation is very simple. Whether it's the Eagle King or Thunder God, we have to give up at least a third of the Border Control Corps. We even have to give up nearly half of the right to speak. The price is too high. Moreover, the Border Control Corps has a special status and duties. Such a deal is not a good thing for the Corps." Bai Qingqian blinked her eyes and whispered, "So, what you said to Big Brother is true." Dongqing Wudi was stunned for a moment before he remembered what he had said to Bai Qingzhao before. He hesitated and nodded, saying, "I've also communicated with the two old masters about this matter, but no decision has been made yet." Dongqing Wudi paused and said thoughtfully, Now the most important thing is the result of the final battle in Beihai. If Tianlan's performance is strong enough, the Border Control Corps will have the perfect candidate. The Border Control Corps was too big. In a sense, it could almost be said to be the most important large-scale integrated army in Zhongzhou State. It was the only one. For such a behemoth, there were all kinds of problems with the Eagle King or Thunder God. Emperor Dong's palace was extremely powerful now, so such problems could not be an obstacle. But if they wanted to achieve their goal, the giant group also needed to pay some price. Under such circumstances, the most correct approach for the giant group was to bypass the Eagle King and Thunder God and directly push forward a person who was perfect and strong in all aspects. He was so strong that once the giant group pushed forward this candidate, no one could find a reason to object. As long as he was pushed forward, everyone would take it for granted that he was the new commander of the Border Control Corps. He was the most suitable and even irreplaceable. Such a person was hard to find. The most suitable meant that there was only one. Compared with the major groups in Zhongzhou State, there was only one such person. It was hard to find. But it didn't mean that the giant group didn't have one. Dongqing Wudi had always had such a trump card in his hand, but he had been hesitating whether to play it or not. When this card was played, no one would object, and no one was qualified to object. It also meant that in the transfer of the supreme power of the Border Control Corps, the price that the giant group had to pay to other groups was much smaller. But if this card was played, the giant group might also lose another trump card, which would also bring some trouble. So Dongqing Wudi needed some new situations. The situation formed after the final battle in Beihai was undoubtedly a good entry point. But the premise was that the situation after the final battle was in line with expectations. Bai Qingqian's eyes were a little worried. Someone outside has already called him His Majesty. Is he really invincible? Is he really as rumored? The final battle in Beihai was the key point and the beginning of the Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan was bound to be involved in it. This was a step he had to take. Bai Qingqian couldn't stop it, and she didn't want to, but she had never let go of the worry in her heart. It was said that there were several invincible realm experts involved in the final battle, and none of them would be on the side of Beihai. Li Tianlan hadn't entered the invincible realm yet. Don't worry. Dongqing Wudi was silent for a while and said with a smile, Tianlan has grown to this point. The worst result can guarantee that he can retreat from the final battle unscathed. Bai Qingqian nodded with a heavy heart. Just as she was about to say something, a middle-aged woman who looked to be in her early 50s had already walked up quietly. Bai Qingqian looked back and was a little surprised. She whispered, Nanny Wu, what's the matter? Speaker, I was just about to cook when I saw someone standing outside. She just stood there, motionless. I asked the minister's guards, and they said that she had been standing there in the middle of the night. The guards asked her and said that she wanted to see you, but she didn't allow anyone to disturb your rest. She has been standing there for several hours. Bai Qingqian stood up in a daze and asked curiously, Who is it? I don't know. I asked her who she was, but she didn't tell me. Nanny Wu shook her head. Bai Qingqian frowned and looked at Dongqing Wudi. They got up and went downstairs at the same time and turned on the manor surveillance in the living room. In the cold morning wind, a somewhat thin figure appeared on the screen. Quiet, gentle, beautiful, and elegant. Bai Qingqian glanced at her. Her first feeling was that she didn't know her, but then she felt a little familiar. She thought for a long time, then slightly raised her eyebrows and said in surprise, Li Shi? Dongqing Wudi nodded and whispered, It seems to be true. This chapter is on the 9th. Chapter 950. Although it was a little strange that Li Shi suddenly appeared here, for Dongqing Wudi and his wife, she was not an uninvited guest with bad intentions. After the surprise, Bai Qingqian put on a coat and walked quickly to the door. At the same time, she asked Nanny Wu to make tea. Li Shi stood quietly at the door. Perhaps because it had been a long time, her body was stained with a lot of morning dew. She looked a little hazy and colder. In the dark corners around the manor, gazes fell on her, intentionally or unintentionally. They observed her every move without malice or kindness. As the third most powerful person in Zhongzhou State, Dongqing Wudi's guards were undoubtedly the best in Zhongzhou State. 8 guards, in 2 shifts, protected Dongqing Wudi 24 hours a day. The 8 guards were all experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm from the Border Control Corps. Their courage and professionalism were beyond doubt. They left the Border Control Corps and entered the shadow sect of Zhongzhou State. What they learned was the sword formations passed down from the Li family's Zhuanyuantai. There were about 4 or 5 people in a group, and each group was a small sword formation. The sword formation was not very aggressive, but it was unparalleled in defense. Hundreds of years ago, after the ancestor of the Li family became the god of war of Zhongzhou State, he once used the 30-meter mortal world domain of the Jiang family of South America, which was known as the best defense in the world, to create 2 sets of protective sword formations with slightly different functions. It became a unique skill that the bodyguards of the Hidden Dragon Sea practiced all the time. In the following hundreds of years, the successive patriarchs of the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai would fine-tune the sword formations, and the various combinations of the sword formations became more and more sophisticated. As far as the guards around Dongqing Wudi were concerned, the sword formation composed of 4 experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm might not be a match for an expert of the invincible realm, but an ordinary expert of the invincible realm could not break the sword formation in a short time. Li Shi also knew this nameless protective sword formation. Every god of war of Zhongzhou State would fine-tune the sword formation. In the past 20 years, Kunlun City was undoubtedly responsible for this work. Kunlun City was responsible for it. It was not Gu Xingyun who was in charge. In fact, in the final analysis, Gu Xingyun, who had not reached the peak of the invincible realm and was barely close to this realm, could not make any fine-tuning suggestions for this sword formation. This work had always been done by Li Shi, who had already reached the peak of the invincible realm. Li Shi naturally knew the sword formation very well. At this time, she was standing in the most convenient place for the guards to observe. Her every move was full of sincerity. So, after a short exchange, the guards hesitated and did not choose to expel her. The black car came from the depths of the manor. Mad 1, Gad 2. Li Shi's eyebrows moved slightly. Before the car came to a complete stop, Bai Qingqian had already opened the door and walked over with almost a trot. "Welcome to the Bai family, Ms. Li Shi." Bai Qingqian's smile was impeccable, gentle, but her eyes looking at Li Shi were somewhat complicated that was difficult to hide. She put another coat of her own in her hand on Li Shi, who was wearing very thin clothes, and whispered, "I should have called in advance. As long as you come, it doesn't matter how late you are." The corner of Li Shi's mouth moved. It seemed that she wanted to say something, but she couldn't say it for a while. Draped in a warm coat, her stiff body seemed to gradually warm up. She glanced over by Qingqian and looked at Dongqing Wudi, who came out of the driver's seat. Dongqing Wudi nodded with a smile and said nothing. Li Shi bowed slightly. Her movements were slow, but they became bigger and bigger. Finally, she turned from a slight bow into a deep bow. It was extremely quiet. Bai Qingqian was a little overwhelmed. She subconsciously reached out to hold Li Shi, feeling a little confused. She knew Li Shi, but she didn't know her at all. In her memory, they met very few times, when they were very young many years ago. As the most outstanding young women of that era, Xie Ji, who was by Wang Tianzong's side, Li Shi, who was by Li Kuangtu's side, and Bai Qingqian, who was by Dongqing Wudi's side, each of them had their own elegance. When they met occasionally, they just nodded to each other as a greeting. She still remembered that when Dongqing Wudi was young, he once fought with Li Kuangtu, and Dongqing Wudi suffered a little loss. Since then, Bai Qingqian seemed to be displeased with Li Kuangtu, and Li Shi. Bai Qingqian's mind was in a mess for a moment, and her memories flew farther and farther. Li Shi's somewhat hoarse and dry voice sounded. "I've thought about it for a long time," she said quietly. "Maybe you won't accept it, but in any case, I should say thank you to you. Thank you for taking care of Rushi for so many years and taking good care of her. Thank you." Even if most of the news was blocked in Kunlun City, she could still roughly know about Dongqing Rushi's situation in a few meetings with Xian Xuanzi. After all, Dongqing Rushi was her biological daughter, and Li Shi had always kept an eye on her. The baby, who should have been the legitimate grandson of the Dongqing clan, was given to Li Honghe by Dongqing Hongguang and Dongqing Wudi. The girl, who should have been the down-and-out princess of the Li family, was given to the Dongqing clan and became the daughter of the Dongqing clan. Bai Qingqian, who just saw her son in a hurry, almost completely collapsed. The loving couple, the filial daughter-in-law, all the beautiful relationship was completely broken at that moment. Mad 1, Gad 2. Bai Qingqian and the Dongqing clan almost completely broke up, but after the initial time, Bai Qingqian, who couldn't find her son, began to gradually pay attention to Dongqing Rushi. She hadn't returned to the Dongqing clan in these years, but she still showed a mother's care and love for Dongqing Rushi. Dongqing Rushi had been in a coma for 2 years. But 2 years ago, in the more than 20 years before that, she never felt that her mother, Bai Qingqian, didn't like her. With this alone, Li Shi could be sure of Bai Qingqian's attitude toward Dongqing Rushi over the years. Dongqing Rushi's current situation was not very good. But Li Shi could not remember the kindness of raising her for so many years. Bai Qingqian's face changed slightly, and she didn't speak. "Don't get me wrong," Li Shi whispered. "I have no intention of robbing Rushi from you. She will always be your daughter. I don't mean that." Bai Qingqian waved her hand a little awkwardly, then pulled Li Shi and laughed. "It's a little cold. Come on, let's go in and talk." Li Shi was pulled into the car by Bai Qingqian. The car started slowly. Dongqing Wudi, who was driving in person, kept looking at Li Shi through the rearview mirror. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Bai Qingqian seemed to know what her husband was thinking. She hesitated for a moment and said softly, I heard that you saw Tanlan as soon as you woke up?" Li Shi nodded. Bai Qingqian glanced at Dongqing Wudi, who was driving in front, and then seemed to make up her mind. She said cautiously, "What did you talk about?" As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her mouth again and said with a forced smile, "Of course, if it's something we shouldn't know." "You are his parents." Li Shi whispered, "There is nothing we shouldn't know. His Majesty thinks so too." Parents, this simplest and most common word seemed to shatter all the defenses in Bai Qingqian's heart in an instant. Her body was stiff in the seat and her face was pale. Li Shi lowered her eyebrows and whispered, "We talked about his and Rushi's life experiences. I told him everything I should tell him." You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.